Zero Foxtrot does not profess to share or promote the opinions and beliefs expressed by show host or guests. The Stay Zero podcast was created to provide a platform for servicemen and women to share their stories. Due to the nature of this podcast, sensitive topics will arise. Conversations about combat, PTSD, drug use, and other such subjects will occur. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the Stay Zero podcast. I am excited to introduce to you David Nelson. If you remember one of our first few episodes, his daughter, Jessica Garner, came in. And so this is kind of a really cool opportunity to have both of these family members in here. David was in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot, shot down 5 times, I believe he said, and got through that and has lived an amazing life with a lot of adventure. And so I think Everest Base Camp, you've hiked the cave in Vietnam, a very successful career. And we met in a pretty unique way at a retreat this last summer. And then found out we're family.
Yes, that was the unique part.
Yeah, that was really...
that our wives are cousins.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm thrilled to meet you, and thank you for coming in.
Absolutely. Oh, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Let's start with that era in our history. In the late 60s, you were joining the Army. What were the circumstances for you? What made you do that?
You mean like why did I join the Army?
Sure.
Okay. It's a really unique, I guess it's a unique story. I didn't do very well in high school, but I did graduate, but just barely. And then went to a junior college in Wharton, Texas. And that, I wasn't doing very well there either. And I never applied for a deferment to go to college, so I got a draft notice. And about that time, I was watching the news one night, and I saw Dan Rather jump off a helicopter in a rice paddy in Vietnam, and I said, I'm going there. I'm going to go do that.
Nice.
And so I went to the draft office and asked them if I could have a deferment till the end of that semester, and they said, sure, no problem. And I walked out of there, and literally the Army recruiter was literally next door. And I walked out one door, in another door, and he goes, I'm joining up, and I want to go to flight school.
So you had a plan.
I did at that point.
What was the situation with the draft? You wanted to pick what you were going to do. If you had been drafted,
infantry.
It was just infantry.
I'd have been walking with an M16.
Yeah.
Very, very likely.
Yeah.
And I'd have probably still gone to Vietnam. The very few people. I think the only people trained at that time that didn't go to Vietnam had, relatives that were senators or congressmen or something like that.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I imagine.
We have a use for you somewhere else. Yeah. That's cool. And so you went over, you spoke with the Army recruiter.
With the Army recruiter, and they sent me to Houston. I lived in Bay City, about 80 miles southwest of Houston.
Okay.
And they sent me to Houston to take a test and get a physical, and it all came back just fine. And they said, okay, we don't really want you because the program is full and for, X number of months, and I forget exactly what, but anyway, it was, instead of me having to go as a draftee in June, I had to have my whole summer off, and in September I showed up
for flight school.
Yeah, well, actually, you had to go to basic training first, but then flight school in Fort Walters, which no longer exists, but it's 50, 60 miles west of Fort Worth.
What year was that?
Oh gosh, that's a really good. Let's see, 1969.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the heart of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the timeline between you go to boot camp, you do your MOS training, to them shipping you out?
Let's see, 20 months.
20 months.
20 months for the training and all. I mean, boot camp's a couple of months, and then basic flight training is a couple of months, and then Fort Rucker for more advanced and flying turbine helicopters then is 4 or 5 months. And then Cobra School, which is what I flew for Cobras. The Cobra School is another couple of months, 10 weeks, something like
20
that.
20 months is quite an investment.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
awesome.
they put a lot of money into the training. I mean, those things are expensive just to fly around, and you spend a lot of hours in them.
Did you feel prepared when you deployed?
When I got on the airplane to go there, I felt prepared. When I got there, I didn't.
Just the illusion of comfort.
Yeah, I mean, when I flew into Saigon, they spend a couple of days just getting you, time zone acclimated and make sure you brush your teeth and have all your uniforms and stuff like that. And then pretty quickly, I was shipped off to Quang Tri province, which was on the DMZ. And the unit I was with was to lead the advance from Quang Tri into Khe Sanh. And the mission is called Lamsan 719, and the idea was to cut off the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And so the amount of combat within the first 2 weeks I had been in Vietnam, I mean, in about 3 weeks, the best friend I ever had in my life was dead. We had lost. We have a contingency of, I believe it was 8 Cobras. I'm not really sure anymore. I've kind of forgotten that, but we've probably had 5 replacements by then. More than half had been shot up and damaged. Now, getting shot down means a couple of different things. It means not being able to use that aircraft again, or not being able to even get back to the original place, or crashing right in, or actually just crash right there on the spot.
Yeah.
But so, 5 shot down 5 times, but that's what I mean in there. 2 of those times were actually on spot, but the other 3 were
where you got hit with something that brought the bird down.
Right. One time, I believe it was a quad 50. And the other time, was an RPG into the tail boom. Wow. And those are the crashes. Then the times in between, you'd take like another quad 50 or something and would shoot out a hydraulic system. And so you only had so many minutes to get the thing on the ground while it was still flyable, or something along those lines.
I was watching some stuff on Lam Son, and like you said, the whole purpose was to try and interrupt the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And it was also supposed to be like a demonstration for the South Vietnamese to really take over and show that we could do the handover to them. Because they, I believe, were supposed to do all the ground combat. We were only giving air support. What was that? You were there for 2 weeks, right?
No, I was there for, I was in that was 6 weeks. 2 weeks was, just the introduction to
just
it.
The introduction phase.
That was just, getting shot up and figuring out. I mean, I'd never really been shot at before.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, you're flying along and there's holes in the windshield. And, and all this, the stuff like you watch on TV where you can hear the guy shooting at you, you can't hear it.
Yeah,
Just the bullet hits the windshield.
Yeah.
Same thing with flak, the 37 millimeter flak. It took me 2 days to figure out those little black things that came flying by and burst in the air. I thought, what was that, a bird or what? So.
A big adjustment period.
Yeah. And, the ARVNs, Army Republic of Vietnam, is what it stands for. It's the good guys.
Yeah.
They were supposed to penetrate in to Laos, where no Americans were supposed to be on the ground.
Yeah.
And they set up Hill 31, and they set up on top of this hill. They had tanks and artillery and things like that. And they were supposed to be some kind of jump-off spot for the rest of them that were going to move further on and actually interdict the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Never moved 1 foot beyond that.
Really?
Not really. I mean, yes, really. But yes, really. But I mean, in reality, they probably tried a couple of times, but then it wasn't going to happen. I mean, they told us there might be. I mean, we're talking about a large area, from Khe Sanh all the way into the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and they were telling us that there might be as many as 3,000 enemy down there. It looked like an anthill. There must have been 30,000, wow. and I'm probably exaggerating, but
I'm sure it looked that way.
We flew over this one area, and and you could see vehicles down there and people running around. Hell, it looked like you were just flying over a national park somewhere, and everybody was just out. I mean, there were that many people around.
Wow,
that many bad guys. And
did you do a lot of work in Laos?
We did. In that period, in that 6, 8 weeks. I'm not sure. I don't remember again exactly. So I got there in January and left there in March. So probably 8 to 10 weeks.
'Cause I know, at least prior to Lamb's Son, everything, you weren't supposed to be there, right? At least not, especially not on the ground, but not overtly. But then after Lamb's Son, we were more overt about it because the government was denying doing any operations in Laos.
You know, it was in our point of view, and from what I saw, you weren't. We could fly anywhere we wanted in Laos, in that area, but ground troops was what they were saying. You know, weren't happening, and it was pretty much true that ground troops, American ground troops, weren't there. Now, to really get something done, they were also hiring Cambodian mercenaries. They would pull in a unit of Cambodian mercenaries to go out on the ground and get something done, like rescue down pilots and things like that.
You had an experience with that, right?
I did.
Tell me about that, because when you told me initially, like the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Like that must have been a terrifying week.
You know, Zach, I've thought about it over the years, and when I knew I was going to come talk to you, I really thought about it, and I sort of wonder sometimes exactly what I remember exactly. I know I spent a number of days, I believe it was 6 nights on the ground. And, I would think to myself that, I mean, you could hear these NVA soldiers and it was mostly NVA soldiers. This was, not the normal peasants that they handed a AK to.
And what were you doing there? What
man,
was
I
it?
was hiding.
Why were you in Laos though? With your because you were shot down.
We
right?
were trying to rescue an F-4 pilot. We were trying to rescue an American fighter pilot that had gotten shot down.
And so you were sent out there to try to find him?
Well, we were sent out there. A Cobra is not equipped to actually carry somebody out, but we were the cover for some Hueys trying to go pick him up.
Yeah.
And none of that worked out. He was just like bait to what happened. And then there were a number of us shot down in there. And, so I tried to remember exactly like which direction did I go to start with, and the only thing I could think of was east, because east was back in South Vietnam.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I could think of. The ocean was east and everything. Of course, it was like 100 and some odd miles away, but so, it was not going to be something I got to real quick.
Yeah.
I think I remember them walking by like 10 feet away because you could smell their cigarettes and stuff.
Really?
But it's probably further than that. It just seemed like that, and
I'm sure it did. It seems like they're stepping on your hands.
I'm trying not to exaggerate, I guess, but it's something that's 52 years ago is hard to remember exactly, what happened.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I want it to be better, and sometimes I want it to be, more dramatic, So
do you remember the crash? Did you kind of wake up and you're like, "Oh shit, where am I?" See because your co-pilot died in the crash, right?
Yeah, and I think
you got to get out of the bird. I remember you saying you had an injury on your leg.
I had a cut on my leg, and that was bleeding quite a bit. So I don't remember getting out really.
Really?
I must have been kind of dazed or something, but I do remember the Cobras have they have a cockpit on top. It's not a door. Okay. And so I remember opening the cockpit, the backseat cockpit opened on the right side, and I remember that. But then I don't really remember very well the first little bit of it, other than figuring out that he wasn't coming with me.
Yeah.
And there was, you could hear all kinds of gunfire going along, still shooting at other helicopters and stuff, not shooting at me, but I knew they'd be along,
Yeah.
And so, and I also knew that just as soon as they were sure it was clear, that the Air Force would be bombing that Cobra. They didn't want the miniguns and things like that to get out. So then it was just really kind of a find a big thick brush that nobody ever went in and try to crawl in there without making any kind of a trail.
Yeah.
And hide and then move and over time it had radio, but it's a standard 121.5 worldwide emergency frequency for aviation. And so, I mean, the NBA were listening to that just as much as anybody else.
Sure.
So you couldn't say, hey, come over here and do this and go that way. I mean, it's just, you couldn't do that.
So what was your strategy to get recovered? How did you don't get caught?
Strategy is, I've never thought about that. I don't know that I had a strategy.
Yeah.
Go east.
Just don't die.
Go east
yeah.
and stay hidden.
Did you have a weapon with you?
I did. I had a 911, a 45, and 9 rounds. Period.
Your final stand. Oh God.
Wow. It was after that. I must have looked like Rambo going out there every day because I had an M16 from then on and hand grenades and all kinds of stuff.
I would too.
But,
hell yeah.
I mean, I was brand new. I mean, I was,
How long had you been in country when that happened?
Let's see. That was after. I'd probably been there 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. Yeah, I was trying to think because by that time I was flying back seat, and if I didn't say it, the front seat's a co-pilot gunner, the back seat is the aircraft commander and pilot. The back seat fired the rockets that were mounted on fixed pods and a 20 millimeter Vulcan cannon. The front seater was the turret guy with a minigun or pair of miniguns or a 40 millimeter grenade launcher and a minigun, whatever. There were 2 weapons up there, and those were the systems in there. And so, and before that, that's not my first time on the ground. Before that, well, I got to back up a tiny bit.
That's not where you want to be as a pilot, is on the ground.
No, you're not. Well, okay, but I did this one voluntarily.
Okay.
On the first time, we flew as a what they call a pink team or a hunter killer team, and we used 2 light. We were our normal mission was 2 Cobras, 2 OH-6s, which was light observation helicopters, and then 1 H model Huey was the command and control up high. And so that was. I never did it with them because I didn't get there before that. But that was the way the unit was set up to do, and that was over after the first 2 days because you didn't have to have anybody search for the enemy. They were all over the place.
Yeah,
there were lots of.
That was the theory.
That was and it's what we went back to. It's what the unit went back to after we left there and went back to the other place. We were kind of a roving cav troop. We went into areas and we'd go into. We were in what's called 2 Corps, the second part of Vietnam. There's I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 and 4. And we were in 2 Corps. And so Pleiku, Dak To, part of the Ashaw Valley, stuff like that, were, in places. And so we would get moved to those places to try to, if they thought there was a buildup coming along or something, is what later went on. But earlier on, like only a couple of weeks after I'd been there, the command and control ship, which was flying up high, got hit, and it's a 4-man crew. 2 of them were wounded. 1 was ambulatory. The other one would have been surgical, and so they went down. And I'm not sure. I was in the front seat. I was a co-pilot gunner, and you could see they were under stress, and a lot of they weren't thinking correctly. So I got him to let me out. He hovered over some tall grass, and I jumped out.
Wow.
And
what did you do then?
I didn't know exactly where they went at first, so I made my way to their downed helicopter, and we were taking some rounds, taking some fire. And so first time in my life I ever shot an M60, so I grabbed their M60 that was mounted on about the 7 o'clock position, and shooting back in the trees. It only took me, seemed like to me it took forever, but it only took a few seconds of me shooting that direction for the gunships to realize what I was doing, that there were some people shooting at us.
Yeah.
And so the gunships took care of it then. So then I grabbed up an M16 and followed the trail. And in elephant grass, you can't hide where you've been. I mean, it makes a trail.
Yeah.
And so I figured out where they were and just, got to them and helped get everything straightened out. The one that was injured in the ambulatory, we got into my seat out of the Cobra. The guy, that guy, should have gotten, all kinds of stuff for doing that. But anyway, he hovered over and we got him in that. And so he flew them back to to the hospital. And,
so you put one of the wounded into your seat in the Cobra,
right?
And then
the
had
one
him
that could
evacuate.
still walk a little bit.
Yeah,
he was shot in the leg and foot.
Wow.
And but he could still get around enough. The other one was unconscious and had lost a lot of blood. And so I got to him and got a tourniquet. And the injury is so high, and it's a femoral injury, so it didn't work out real well.
Yeah.
But and then we stayed down there about another, I don't know, seems like forever to me, but I mean probably 10 or 15 minutes, and they were able to get another helicopter in to get us out.
Wow.
And everything. So, and there was no more. Once I got to them, and the other gunships were then. I mean, they were shooting a circle around us, and we weren't bothered anymore by the bad guys there. I got a Silver Star for that.
Wow.
Yeah. They thought,
That's a hell of a decision to make. I don't know too many people jump out of the helicopter and go onto the ground.
I didn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
I just did it.
It's amazing. I mean, I guess when you're that age and you're in that zone, you just see what needs to be done and you do it. Like, you can't think about it, right?
You can't.
Yeah.
You really can't. You just do it. You really do.
So that was 5 weeks into your time in Vietnam.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, that jumping out and doing that was in the first 2 weeks.
Wow.
Because that was when I was still flying front seat gunner. Because shortly a week or two after that, we had lost so many people that we were flying the front seat gunner in non-Cobra qualified pilots.
Really? So just anybody you can get in the bird that can pull a trigger and fly it.
I mean, the problem with a Cobra, if you're in the front seat, there were joysticks like this. They were like this tall. So as opposed to moving a normal stick where, it's a basic 5-to-1 ratio. And so it's really, really hard to fly from the front seat.
Wow.
You can do it. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could do it. But they just, we were putting Loach pilots, the light observation helicopter pilots, in the front seat to man the turret and the chunk 4mm grenade launcher.
Yeah. What was the strategy that y'all were using as pilots? I know you said that you came in and the unit was running with like a Huey up top, kind of controlling everything. And you said y'all were 150 feet off the ground, flying
At
100 knots. Like what would talk to me about that strategy, why that was working?
The whole thing fell apart almost immediately. They kept trying to make it work where they would move beyond that one hill, where they moved into this one hill, and they called it Hill 31. And they moved into this one hill and set up a base in there. The Arvins did. And the goal was that from that base, they would then venture out and interdict the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it became, for us, it became nothing but keeping the road open between Vietnam and Hill 31. That became our only thing. We didn't really go further than that. I mean, now and then, yes, but not much.
Protecting our own Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Right, exactly. A good way to put it. Excellent way to put it, yeah. So in our own Ho Chi Minh Trail. So, that's what we did. And so the light observation helicopters were eliminated from the thing. And so it was just Cobras and sometimes only Cobras would go in, because they had some tanks, and then they had a lot of people, and so they were making it where a truck couldn't get through with supplies or anything to that. I'm talking about the NVA was, And so we would go in and, and just, try to make the road passable. And I'm not talking about holes in the road. I'm talking about people shooting at them.
Sure.
So that became our only mission. Mission to that.
Focusing on that road.
Yeah, that's all. And then finally they just gave up and realized it was not going to happen.
That y'all were going to maintain it, or they gave up?
No, I don't know who decided that the Arvins were not going to move beyond that and interdict the basic goal was not going to be achieved.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you talked and understand, I was a warrant officer, so I don't get top level discussions.
Sure. I think it was planned to be a 90-day operation, and it was pretty well established at the 60-day point that it was a failure.
That's correct. Yeah.
I think more activity picked up through the Ho Chi Minh Trail just to support, the NVA's side of the war. And I saw, or at least a book that I read about how they managed that trail was pretty
phenomenal.
Impressive.
Very impressive.
They had multiple checkpoints along the way. And so, like, if you blew up a bulldozer at checkpoint 10, they didn't bring another bulldozer from 1. They brought the one from 9, and everything just bumped down 1, and they only had to move 1 and that's how they kept the whole thing. It would be down for a day.
It was incredible.
And it would be right back
it was
up.
Incredible about the fact that you could fly right over it and not see it. Unless you could track it, but you couldn't really find it most of the time.
Wow.
It was pretty.
Even though, because it wasn't just on foot, like they were moving vehicles and things.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about just on foot. I'm talking about moving vehicles and things through. Maybe it sounds strange, but I really got to where I respected my enemy. We weren't fighting people who didn't understand what they were doing.
For sure.
At all.
For sure. I felt that way in Iraq a few times, seeing the ingenuity and the things that they would come up with for IED triggers or, they weren't dumb. At least not after the first year or two. I figured all the dumb ones got killed. It was just the smart guys that were left. Oh. What else can you tell me about that deployment?
Honestly, the most I'm going to call it the most exciting. The most exciting part was that couple of months in Lamson 719. But, there were a lot of other things. After that, because that started my thing. That started my 12 months there. So I had 10 more months of what I'm going to call our normal, hunter killer in a free fire zone. We would get a box and go find somebody to fight with.
Yeah.
And we did that 6 days a week. So there were numerous aircraft shot down. There were numerous people get killed in that period of time. But it all became such a normal, everyday thing that not people getting shot down or killed, but it became a normal, everyday thing that you would find somebody that was willing to fight with you.
Yeah.
And
wasn't hard to pick a fight.
It was not. It was not difficult to pick a fight at all. And the thing is, they were pretty much ready, because if they had a new free fire zone, they would drop pamphlets. The Air Force would drop, C-130 would drop, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of pamphlets saying, this is going to become, I don't know what language they use. I can't read Vietnamese, but this is going to, become a free fire zone basically, and
everybody get out.
Right.
Wow.
And so, if they were still there, they were well prepared for you.
Yeah. So they kind of knew where to expect you as well.
Absolutely.
Man, we
dumbest thing in the world.
Like,
can you imagine?
I remember in Fallujah, either Fallujah or Karma, when we were sweeping through finding pamphlets.
Yeah.
Where I was like, well, how are we supposed to, we're going through all this effort to try to sneak in and and it's like, there's flyers saying, hey, we're coming on this date.
See, there you go.
What the fuck?
And that's what I'm talking about. It's just, that's what it was like. We don't seem to learn from this stuff very well.
I know.
Very well at all.
Rinse and repeat.
Yes. Yeah.
What was the morale like for you guys? Was everybody...
If I call it dead flat, because see, now if somebody's really seriously injured or something, it's my understanding that it doesn't really become a secret or something. It doesn't, they're gone one day and people might say, hey, God, we're sorry, so, but, or, he's going to be okay or something. We didn't get any of that.
Really?
If somebody got hurt one day and we're gone, you never heard about it again. So it was really pretty.
Shouldn't speak about it.
No, not at all.
I know you mentioned that you didn't make a lot of friends.
You didn't.
In that time.
You didn't. You didn't at all. I mean, you make maybe one or two that you talked to. I mean, my roommate, Michel DeVoe, he was a loach driver. And, I mean, we got to be friends. I mean, hell, we slept in the same room.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about, this room would make 3 of our rooms. And so, you're not talking about spaced out a lot.
Yeah.
And, he was seriously injured and ended up being shipped home. So, and I saw him, and after that, he's passed away now, but he had cancer. So, I mean, I can think of the places like like you go to Doc Toe, which Doc Toe was a really bad place, and there we were supporting the special forces. Because it was basically Doc Toe is mountains on 3 sides, and
so a big valley then.
Yeah, well, more like a box canyon, more than anything else. And
do we have a base there?
Not really. I mean, there were some special forces camps here and there that didn't have really all that many people, and if they were about to get overrun or something, or they were, they would call in us. They were mostly sneaking around. But if they got into a problem where there was more than they expected, or they got seen, or whatever, for whatever reason, we would get the call to go do that. And it was the same kind of thing at a bunch of different places. I mean, most of the time, we operated out of just northwest of a place called a Bonsan Pass, which is going along the coastal road, which is Highway 1. There was through there, and there were just a lot of weapons moved through that, and we did that a lot.
Talk to me about some of the shenanigans that y'all pulled, because I remember a few little stories that. Because you're still 19, 20 years old, right? We're still shitheads, right?
21 by the end.
We're having a good time.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. Michel DeVoe and I, we had an air-conditioned room.
Yeah. How did you acquire
nobody
that?
else did. But he and I managed that out of Phuket Air Base wasn't far away from us. And when we were over there refueling and rearming one time, we saw all these air conditioners in crates.
Nice.
And so one night we went and got one. You got, after a while, you got tired of eating sea rations, which you look at them and some of that stuff was canned in the late 1940s. So, you're talking about 30-year-old, eggs in a can. And, and to make that survive, I mean, it's 50% eggs, 50% salt. And, so MREs were, if they became visible somewhere, maybe we would work on
we pulled some night ops a few times as well. We had the running joke that there's ever only been one thief in the Marine Corps, and everyone else is just trying to get their shit back.
Yeah. And that's a good way to look at it. I mean, the stuff's sitting around, and so you just gotta go, just gotta go get it. And nobody ever said anything. So
that's good.
I'm not sure that they really gave a damn.
We got into some trouble stealing Gatorades and like muffins, because we were running missions out of Aruba and on this little fob, and we're the only platoon that was leaving to go do things, and all the guys sitting back, either working in the offices or whatever it was that they did, would have all these stashes of food and water and drinks and all these things. And we're over here, like you said, eating MREs and bullshit. And I'm like, screw these guys. And so it gets dark. You cut a few locks, you know, move some chains around, and you come up with an air conditioner. Yeah.
And it's you know, I mean, I never looked at it as a thief.
all
you
of
know?
ours.
I mean, I really didn't. It belonged to the U.S. military, and so did I. And so we went, you know, hand in hand. And so, you know, and I mean, it was interesting rewiring our little room to where it would handle an air conditioner, but that was, you know.
I'm sure.
It
We had
worked out
one
well.
window unit in a room on the Jordanian border, but there was no electricity in the rest of the building. It was just this one little room. And they called me MacGyver for like a week because I ended up taking a bunch of MRE boxes apart, duct taping in to make an air-conditioned duct, and stringing it from the ceiling with 550 cord to get it back into our room where everybody slept. And that was a game changer.
Well, I tell you, I'm not surprised with your MacGyver. After I watched your Naked and Afraid,
It had to be
you
done.
MacGyvered a lot of stuff on
Nothing
that.
was getting done for me.
I thought that was pretty. I thought that was pretty interesting.
It was a good time.
Yeah.
Did y'all go through some jungle survival training for all that? Did you use any of that?
You did go through that. Was it really unuseful? No. No, it was just, I think it was check a box, you know, to get the E&E stuff, you know, in there.
Did you go through SEER as part of pilots?
Not really.
Not really?
No.
Wow.
You know,
You're just winging it.
pretty much.
Wow.
You know, but I mean, hiding is not something you got to really learn. You know?
We do it as a kid. Hide and
You know,
seek,
yeah.
right?
So it was kind of something that it's come kind of natural. You know, the idea of going someplace where nobody has been, there's not a trail. I mean, you got to stay off trails and things like that. You got to get into
the thick.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and there's lots of thick there.
I bet. Was it pretty
It's a
triple canopy
tropical jungle.
Yeah.
You know, now where there's not a lot of thick is you know where the canopy is. You know, there's double and triple canopy. There's just no sunlight.
Right. So nothing grows on the jungle floor then.
Like that. Yeah, but that's not, you know.
That's a high stakes game of hide and seek that you're playing though.
Yes.
Mm. So, but you said you had a cut on your leg. How did you fix that?
With a little fishing kit, because I kept bleeding out of that, and a little string and a fish hook.
Just sewed yourself up.
Just, you know, a couple of little pieces, and then it quit bleeding as much, and so.
Wow.
Oh, you know.
That's hardcore.
I thought it was necessary.
That's what it is. You do what you got to do, right?
You know, yeah, because I kept thinking it would quit bleeding and quit, you know, and of course, you know, you can cover your tracks a lot, but not when you're dripping blood here and there.
Blood, yeah. Were they using dogs or anything?
No. No, they'd have found me. They'd have found me in a heartbeat with that.
Good thing.
You know.
Stinky Americans.
And, you know, they weren't. I don't think the people really looking for me. I don't think the people walking around were really that. You know, they're going like, "Hey, he could be anywhere around here." So they were not real.
They didn't have all day searching.
Yeah. They didn't. They were you know they weren't just really looking really hard or anything.
You said there were some other pilots that y'all were going to rescue someone. Yes. There were some other
well, we still had the Air Force pilot down there.
Were you able to link up with anyone?
You know,
how did you get
towards the end?
Okay.
You know, towards the last day or two, the last day really.
How'd you know how to link up with them?
You know,
are y'all doing in radio windows?
You know, in talking on the radio, you know, you could kind of get a direction to go. You know, by the, you know, a helicopter, they don't know exactly where I am either because I can't tell them that.
Sure.
You know, but, you know, you get people, you know, you get them flying from the area we're in back to where, you know, a direction kind of they want us to go. And I keep saying go east, you know. I knew that there was a river to the east.
Okay.
And so when you found the river, you know, get to the river and then figure out, you know, whether you go north or south on the river.
Big landmarks, big to small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so who rescued you?
Basically the Air Force in one of their Jolly Green Giants. You know, they're basically their rescue aircraft. And
a helicopter?
Yep.
They're able to drop down and pick you up?
Yep.
Wow.
They did that. And, they basically got us into an area. And, by that time we had some weapons, other weapons besides 9 rounds in a 45 that was probably worn out.
So you came across some other...
They dropped stuff to us.
Oh, wow.
By the time we got to that river, they dropped stuff to us.
Okay.
Yeah. When we were
nice.
kind of together, and then,
How many of you were there?
7.
Wow.
The area was well protected by gunships and things like that.
Okay. Keeping everybody away.
Yeah.
How long, and would you get sick or anything like that? Or they bring you to the hospital, check out your leg, admire your stitching abilities, give you a bandage? And
there was a MASH unit, which a lot of people don't understand MASH, but MASH is a mobile armor surgical hospital, and there was a MASH unit there, and then they took out my stitches and put some other ones in,
some real ones.
Here we go. I mean, they didn't have enough. There were not enough pilots around to have something like that be a reason to not
give you a week off.
No.
Yeah. So you're right back in the air.
Yeah.
Do you think that was good or bad? Sometimes I feel like getting too much time to think about it just gets me into my own head. Like, let me move on. Or were you, how'd you feel about that?
Zach, somehow I was able to just never think about it until about the last 3 weeks I was in Vietnam.
Mm.
And at that point, I was kind of like, you know what? I don't really want to do this anymore. I don't want to get killed, 3 weeks from going home.
Yeah.
And I was an instructor pilot in Cobras. Mm. And every 90 days, a Cobra pilot needed a check ride, practicing engine out, tail rotor failures, things like that, other different system failures. And so I just did check rides for, the last few weeks. And I was the only Cobra IP in a fairly large area, more units than just the one I was in.
Yeah.
And so, and they knew that. And so Colonel Anderson, who was basically the commander of that entire area, he was Cobra qualified, but he would only go fly with me. And I don't mean that as derogatory to him, except he only got to fly a couple times a month. Mm. And so, and to go fly in a combat zone a couple times a month, you're thinking more about flying. Well, those things became no different than putting on your pants.
Yeah.
Once you put them on, you don't think about them anymore. That part just became natural because the fighting part didn't.
Yeah, it's an extension of your body at that point.
It is.
I bet.
And so, but anyway, he was the one that said, why don't you just give check rides?
Yeah, I think that would be almost more dangerous to only put him out a couple of times a month to where he can't make it second nature.
He didn't go looking for fights.
Yeah.
He and I would go fly around and shoot rockets into the ocean. If you saw like
fishing,
you saw some sharks.
Oh, okay.
Not for because you could see it. Right off the coast there.
Yeah.
Which was not far from where we were, and we you could shoot rockets into the ocean or
shooting at sharks.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Or there was this one mountaintop not far away that had you ever see these kind of structures where there's almost like a ball on top of a tee. It's like a golf ball on top of a tee remaining there, and we were trying to get that to roll down the hill. Shoot at that. Shoot rockets at that.
Shenanigans.
Yeah. And so he, and he was a great guy. He was a really, really nice guy, and I liked him. And so, he, that's the little bit of flying he did. But the only reason I'm bringing him up is he was the one that kind of hooked up with, hey, go give check rides to these other Cobra units that I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
And so he would tell them, and they go, okay, yeah, we need so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so to have a check ride. Okay, fine.
That's good.
I'll do 2 a day.
Yeah, I think you certainly served your time, earned that. Absolutely. And I understand that mindset.
And I appreciate you saying that. Sometimes I don't think so, but yeah. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And we all kind of, when you get there, you're nervous, you're excited, you're trying to feel out like what's this deployment going to be like? What are the strategies we're using against them? What are they using against us? how's this go? And then, like you said, those last couple weeks, you're like, man, I hope nothing stupid. Like, I've been through so much in this.
And I've done dumbass things.
Right. And I've gotten away with a
Yes.
lot of things. Like, I might actually pull this off and not get killed here. Let's not do so many dumbass things. Right. And I felt that every deployment that I did as well. Because you do go in with, you have to kind of dump it at the door and commit to what you're doing.
So you did a lot more deployments than I did. I mean, I only did one. And I mean, it was a year long, 13 months, but year long. And my shock, that Lamson 719, first time I rode, in a Cobra in Vietnam and crossed the border, into Laos, ran right down the DMZ into Khe Sanh and then crossed that border. I was like, I had no clue. I mean, I had spent, I don't know, 14, 15 months, something like that, 18 months altogether, in flight school. Well, and did you shoot rockets? Yeah, you shoot rockets at immobile targets.
Right.
That didn't shoot back.
Right.
And all of a sudden somebody's shooting back.
Yeah, two-way range is very different.
It is.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. And so I got a real good initiation with that.
The documentary I was watching about that said there was right at a 50-50 chance of who came back and who didn't.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go like on Wikipedia and see the number of aircraft lost in that is incredible.
I think it was at least the one it was 174 aircraft that were destroyed.
Yes.
And like another couple hundred that were damaged.
Yes.
But it was hard to calculate because they'd get shot up every time they went out. So it was,
There were people, they had people sitting there, for holes in windshields, just take a little piece of plexiglass and glue it on over the hole. And the Cobra's a canopy. So, you got glass all around you. Right. And, and it's just light plexiglass. I mean, it's not bulletproof at all.
Right.
And the other thing is just, the rounds that came through the tail boom or through the cockpit or something like that.
Was there any armor on the Cobra? Your seat? Anything?
The seat is armored.
Okay.
It is. And
protect your ass at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
About it.
And honestly, this is a funny story. The side armor is fixed. And so, but the seat comes up and down. All right. So when I first got there, I would like to see, what was going on and everything. And my head would be up. I mean, that armor would be down to here. By the time I left, I had to stretch my neck to see around that armor. I mean, I had that seat all the way at the bottom, and that armor was all the way up to here.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what I had thought about it. I actually tried to, I did apply to actually stay in Vietnam for another 6 months when I was there.
Why did you want to do that?
The unit I was with had almost all new people, and they were making mistakes and having problems and things like that. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I felt somewhat responsible that I needed to be there to kind of, at least teach them a little bit.
Sure.
But I'm not sure why the Army, at that time, they totally quit anybody who wanted to do an extension.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't get why. I don't really know. I don't really understand that. But they had just basically stopped all extensions.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people feel that sense of responsibility. I did. My last tour, I would have gone home about 3 months into it. But you start working with guys, you start training with them, you deploy with them, you're running missions with them. There was a sense like, man, if I go home and something happens, I had the opportunity to at least finish this out. Everybody come home together. Like, let's conclude it as a team. There was that sense of responsibility to each other. And a lot of guys, I ended up doing 4 years and 4 months just to finish that last tour. And I think a lot of guys did that because of that sense of responsibility, like you're saying.
The other thing is, for me, because I was such a poor student in high school and it had no self-confidence when I went there, but did when I was there. After a while, realized that I actually was not a dumbass like everybody told me I was. And
You were somebody over there.
well, I felt confident there. I knew what I was doing every day.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, and I did not have confidence in coming back home. In what it was going to be like. I mean, because you could read, it took a month to get there, but my mom would send me, a Sunday paper every now and then, and you could read what's going on with the.
Sorry about that.
But you
My
could
phone goes off. Damn it.
you could read what's going on in the anti-war protesters and everything, and just before I left. My high school girlfriend, the first person I ever really totally fell in love with, is explaining to me. She's a year older than me and going to school at Trinity in San Antonio. And she's explaining to me how she is working with a group to interrupt the blood supply to BAMC, which was what is now called BAMC. It wasn't really called Brooke Army. I mean, it was Brooke Army Medical Center then, but it was nothing like what it is today. And, so.
She was a protester.
Yes.
Wow.
And so, but I mean, a protester with a sign or a flag or something like that's one thing. But when you attempt to cut off the blood supply or limit the blood supply to the facility that took the vast majority of American soldiers injured in Vietnam, I mean, so really, truly, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, your goal is to end a war. Okay, fine. That's your right. But you're ending it by, advancing the injury or killing other, additional Americans. Anyway, that's the way I look at it now. She and I obviously aren't friends.
Yeah, that's some treasonous shit right there.
Well, it's either murder or attempted murder, one of the two.
Absolutely.
That's exactly the way I look at it.
And who was that woman, Jane, that went to
Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
she did
anybody but a well-known actress would have gone to jail over that. I mean, that would have come back to the United States and would
That's
have been,
pure evil.
It was.
I read the story of her when she went to visit the POW camp in Hanoi, and one of the POWs gave her a letter or a message, and she turned around and gave it to the VC and reported him for trying to pass her a note to get back to U.S. forces or families.
Yeah, I did not know that, but I'm not surprised.
Oh, I hope I'm speaking right on that. I'm pretty sure that was what I remember.
I have
from
no
her,
doubt that's. I'm going to be really honest with you. I tried not to really read back on stuff like that.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing.
It's in a way, the Army and Vietnam made what I was able to do later in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But you know this. Combat changes you. It changes you as a person for the remainder of your life. At least in my case, it has. And we'll talk a little bit more about, what I've done about that later in this. But it really does.
Absolutely. What was the culture back home like when you came home from that?
Don't tell anybody where you've been. And, with some of my best friends, I remember getting off of the airplane. We flew back into Seattle. And then from Seattle, I got a flight from Seattle to Houston, where my parents and my brother were going to pick me up. And the Houston has really long walkways down to the area where the airplanes are parked. And, they're just really long, almost a tunnel looking thing. And I remember it was really weird, but walking up that, because it's uphill back towards the main part of the terminal where people would meet me, everybody would get over to the other side. I mean, I had half of that whole aisle to myself. They knew who you. I guess they knew who you were. I mean, I'm in jungle boots and.
Had you showered?
Yeah, once.
Yeah. So you didn't stink.
No, I didn't stink. Nobody could smell me. I didn't stink. But man, I guess you got a dark tan. You look like a raccoon because you wore sunglasses all the time, and you don't look like your average American soldier that's just going from one place to another. You look like you belong in a jungle.
Yeah. You look feral.
You did, and maybe it's the way I looked. I mean, my brother walked up and goes, "God, your eyes are different. Your eyes have changed color,"
Wow.
And that was when they were picking me up. So you did things like that, and then Wayne Harvey, friend of mine in high school, and I called him, was there, and we were going to go see some of our old high school friends. So he said, "Don't tell anybody where you've been."
Well, didn't they all know though? They just didn't want to hear about it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure they, actually, come to think about it, there's a couple that I saw, a few years ago that went, "Well, what did you do after you graduated from high school?" And I went, "Well, I went to Vietnam. How about you?" and they said, well, I didn't know you did that.
Wow.
But I imagine most of them did.
Yeah, I guess y'all didn't have Facebook to post it back then.
No, there was no Facebook. There was no Facebook. There was no cell phones. There was nothing like that.
Graduated and disappeared for a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know. I mean, I came home and I went back to Bay City where my parents were. I had a 30-day leave, and it was very interesting because I remember my mother having a bridge club and I, with a bunch of ladies around, and I walked through the house and it got really quiet. I mean, there's a bunch of ladies talking.
Do you think people were afraid of you?
I do.
Yeah.
In fact, I didn't really think of that until Friday.
Really?
Wednesday last week. It'd be a week ago tomorrow. I had two guys that I'd been to dental school with that I hadn't seen in forever. How we got hooked up, I'm not really sure. But I said, and we all lived in the same neighborhood. We didn't even know it. And I said, "Hey, why don't you guys, let's go over to Maudie's and have, dinner." So we went over there. And one of them said, "Do you realize how scared the rest of the class was of you?" And this is after I got out of the Army and I was in dental school.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, no, why?" And he goes, "Well, everybody was just, said even the professors were, different to you as compared to anybody else." And I said, "I didn't notice that." But he said, yeah, everybody all scared of you. So, that's the only thing that's why I was able to answer that. I never thought about that. I never thought about people being scared of me, but I guess that's what it was.
I experienced that out of the Marine Corps as well. Particularly one of the firemen I worked with told me I almost didn't get the job because one of the chiefs was afraid that I would fly off the deep end or have some emotional breakdown or was, volatile in some way that nobody could calculate. And I would, go on a killing spree or something.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting thing to hear. 'Cause like what?
Yeah.
Why would he think that? But I think it's, people don't, and I experienced some isolation from my own family where everyone was just real quiet, wasn't sure how to communicate with me, which kind of increased some of the isolation that I felt when I came home. Because, I left, I was 18, it was high school. My cousins lived next door. Everybody, we would have parties and everyone was very social. And then, I come back 4 years later and it's very surreal. It's like, I know this place, but I don't feel a part of it anymore.
I mean, it's funny you say that because I understand that. I have a brother and sister. My brother's 2 years younger than me, and my sister is 6 years younger than I am. Well, my sister was still at home when I came home from Vietnam, and she didn't want anything to do with me at all.
Wow.
No. My brother, he was in college and he was okay with it. He was okay with who I was. He wasn't afraid of me at all. I think my sister might have been.
Was it just the public perception of the war?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Kent State, with National Guard shooting a bunch of people at Kent State University.
Yeah. I remember
so we'd
that.
had Kent State.
Yep.
We had there was the picture of that girl, running, in Quang Tri with the napalm. There was, all kinds of stuff like that. And it's, the anti-war had become a significant part of the daily life.
Yeah.
And, the atrocities and the people killed and stuff like that. And so, and Vietnam veterans were labeled baby killers. And, you know, and I've tried to figure out where that came from. I think a lot of it had to do with, you know, hunter-killer missions where you get a free fire zone and kill everything in it.
Yeah.
Elephants, water buffalo, whatever.
Yeah.
That can aid the enemy. And, you know, so.
It's also like the worst thing they could think to call you.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So that's what they go.
Yeah.
And there's some shock value in that as well, because nobody wants to do that.
And it was a dumbasses, like on a you know, one guy, you know, one crew chief, not even a pilot, you know, on the bell house, you know, of Cobra, you know, painted on there, aim low for kids. And I'm like,
yeah,
you know, and I mean, it only lasted a couple of days, but there were a lot of pictures of it.
No doubt. It only takes one.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, makes it to the Time magazine or some shit. Yeah. That's the insurgent war. I mean, they hide among the population. I feel like Vietnam kind of showed the world how to beat us and how to play the game against us in a way that our own rules.
Well, I totally agree with you, and I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No.
But you know, I mean, they don't have any other way to fight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is again where I became, you know, to where I respected my first. I think if you respect your enemy, you won't underestimate them,
Sure.
and you got a better chance of living if you don't underestimate somebody shooting at you.
For sure.
And so I think that that had, you know, a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have people like us who had gunships and helicopters to move your people and trucks and bombers and things like that, and you're fighting against it, they freaking won.
Yeah.
You know, in the end, they won over all of that. And
I felt very similar in Iraq because just looking around, if I had been born there, I'd have been an insurgent 1,000%.
Yeah.
Some invading force
Yes.
came in and they took over my town and they're telling everybody what to do
Right.
with the threat of gunpoint. My mischievous little ass would have been putting bombs in the road and throwing hand grenades off of buildings, and for probably just lack of anything else to do because there was nothing for them to do but mess with us.
And before that, okay, I mean, don't get me wrong, Saddam Hussein was not a good guy.
Sure.
I'm not saying that at all.
Absolutely.
But prior to us invading Iraq, they went to college.
Mm-hmm.
They traveled around the world. You know, they had passports and could travel and come back and stuff like that. You know, they had new cars and gasoline and houses and air conditioning and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you know, seriously, they had a dictator for, you know, and you had to have, you know, 100% loyalty to that dictator and that regime. But other than that, they lived fairly decent lives.
Right.
And it went downhill.
Yeah.
And so, and I understand what we did. I understand why we did it. I understand that, you know, that the thought behind it, but still.
For the Iraqis on the ground, it's no different.
No,
I mean,
it's
you
not.
You came in and you took my country
Right.
over.
Right. And
Fuck you.
I'm like you. You invade, if you were occupying part of, you know, the United States, would I do all that stuff? If I had, absolutely. I would go out of my way to learn how to most damage you
Absolutely.
for doing that. You know, I think it's human nature.
And the insurgency side kind of seems like the more fun side to be on. Like, right.
Talk about MacGyver.
Just be effective. I don't care how you do it, right?
Yeah, to be able to think up some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just glad they didn't have IEDs, you know, in Vietnam, because I don't know that we'd have figured out how to handle that. You know, that would have been.
Man, I know y'all had some mines, but yeah, the IED war really ramped up over in Middle.
But most of ours were claymores set on the side of the road.
Oh, okay.
Okay, most of ours weren't actually bombs that you drive over or anything. You had some 10-year-old kid that when a truck went by, they, you know, pulled the clacker and set off a claymore. That's what, you know, we did have that. And so if you saw some kid sitting on the side of the road kind of looking, you know, around. Now, I probably didn't do 20 miles in a truck the entire time I'm there.
That's good.
You know.
Yeah.
But the few times that I did, you know, I mean, that's what they look for. And then the other thing was throwing hand grenades in the window of a bus if you were going somewhere where they, you know, all of them had expanded metal over the windows that a hand grenade would just bounce off of.
Oh, yeah. I had a hand grenade hit the wall of my high back one time because they'd start with rocks, right? Which we can't do anything about rocks. And I ended up getting slingshots and tearing up some kids with a slingshot. But I remember in Fallujah, they were throwing rocks one day and this loud one whack hits the side of the thing. I was like, damn. And it bounces up over the corner and lands in the street. And one of the guys peeks his head. He was like, oh, shit. And boom, this grenade goes off and all the kids go running. Like, man, there would have been 8 of us in the back. Like, it was a full high back, either piling out at 40 miles an hour, or I think I'd have jumped out for sure and taken my chances with the road. But if you even see it, if you know what it is, there's water bottles and backpacks and guys everywhere.
Yeah.
It was a mess. Yeah. And using children in that way is pretty sinister.
It is. And I mean, would we do, if we were occupied, would we do the same thing? We grew up different. I would not use the same tactics because I grew up differently, but I didn't grow up in the way they did.
Right.
No. And so, again, respect your enemy.
How long of a war do you think it would have to be before people started to use their kids? Initially, I don't think anyone would do that. But if you're facing losing and you're facing being taken over by a communist state or something that you believe that would be, I mean, there's worse things than death, right? I would think living under a regime that tortures and kills people, and like you wouldn't want that for your kid. I don't know how long it would take because people are obviously doing it.
I have a really hard time understanding their mindset.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up with, wondering what I was going to eat or, running around in dirt streets with, half-assed clothes. So
it's a hard thing to.
It is. It's really a hard thing.
Perspective to have.
Yeah. When you're fighting something that is so much bigger than yours, it just almost anything seems fair.
Yeah. I imagine so. That, and I think in places where, there's extreme poverty, people have a more intimate experience with death than we do here.
They do.
Somebody dies now, you call an ambulance, you call the morgue, they take the body away, they pump it full of formaldehyde, they put makeup and nice clothes, and they present them for everyone to come by a few days later and say goodbye. You don't have that in other countries. Mm-hmm. And death is a part of life. And I don't know, maybe they just... different, I guess.
I do think, and death becomes so normal, so every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was talking about in Vietnam, when I said everything was just kind of flat.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really ever go out and celebrate something, but you also didn't go grieve it either. You just were flat all the way along because it happened all the time.
Right.
The first time, when that friend of mine that I went through basic with, to me, it was, I hate to say it was significant for about 2 hours. And then somebody said, you got a mission, you need to get going.
Just emotionally impotent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could imagine that.
So
I think we were that way too. So you came home, had to deal with some cultural changes, or at least some of the, I guess, negative publicity from having gone over there. What was your plan? Did you have one laid out? I
felt comfortable and confident even, at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, because what I did, I flew helicopters 5 days a week, and I was an instructor. I was an instrument and a contact. Contact is teaching you to fly the thing in the first place, and then instruments to teach you to fly in the clouds. And so that's what I did. And so I was real confident in that. And, there was nobody shooting at you. And I went home, every day and I was going to go, do the same thing tomorrow. And you drank a lot and smoked a lot of pot and, life just went on.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah. People think you smoke a lot of pot while you're in Vietnam. I didn't. But when I came home, there's no question about it.
Yeah. I think that was the thing. Then everybody was doing that.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a guy that in the same apartment complex that I lived in, and he was a narc for the county sheriff's department, and he would bring home some from any time they busted a bunch of people and stuff. He'd bring it home.
Nice. Appreciate your time, sir. Here you go. Take some of that home.
And so I was like, okay, well, that's fine. That's fine with me. But
it's not a bad friend to have.
Yeah. Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you didn't have a lot of a plan when you came home.
No, I didn't. And then, but it evolved that I really wanted to go back to college. I finally realized I wasn't stupid, and
why did you think you were stupid?
My dad was a great guy, but he used to tell me that. He said, I'm really disappointed in you. You're just really not smart enough to go on. I'm dyslexic. I'm severely dyslexic. And, I can't spell. I mean, the things they would do, I think they probably quit it by the time you went to school and everything, but elementary school, you'd do the 10 spelling words you're supposed to do by the end of the week, and you're supposed to have a spelling bee at the end of the week. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just really didn't work. And so, and my dad was my dad was the first of his family to ever go to college. He also spent 2.5 years in a prisoner of war camp in World War II in Poland.
Wow.
And,
did he ever talk about that?
Not really. I'm going to say really almost not at all. It wasn't until it wasn't until after he passed away that my mom gave me his diary. And so I had his diary from that time. I still have it.
Did you read it?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did he open up in there?
I'm not going to say he would. I'm not going to say he really opened up. It got. I'm going to say it's more general. I mean, he was a senior American officer in this prisoner of war camp, and he didn't. It was towards the end. Yeah, I mean, but it was all the way to the end. I mean, that's when the Americans came in and took over the prisoner of war camp and stuff. Yeah. So it was right to the end, and he said the German soldiers there, the guards and stuff, didn't have a whole lot more food than they did, wow. And and by the time he was done, he was down around 100 pounds, and he's about my size.
Wow.
So.
I imagine that would have an effect on someone.
Yeah, he had a hard time, and he had, he just had great expectations for what I would do, and I just didn't live up to that, when I was in high school and everything. Anyway, what that breaks down is, the Army built some confidence in me and everything. I wanted to go back to college, and so the Army had what's called a bootstrap program where they you write this essay and ask to be sent back to college, and they pay your salary. You can grow long hair. You don't have to do anything. You don't go to training, 2 weeks a year like the National Guard or anything. You just go to school, but then when you come back, you're going to spend a lot of time in the Army. So I wanted to go, and they came back with. I mean, it really was, on the in the response to that was uneducatable.
Oh, fuck you. We can't send this guy to school. He can't write.
You keep flying helicopters. You're just fine with that. We don't have a whole lot of you, with your experience and stuff. And we don't think you can go much further than that in education or any kind of, in any kind of officer program. So, you just hang in there and do what you're doing.
Well, I mean, obviously you are educatable. You were flying Cobras in Vietnam, lived through the whole experience, and were teaching, and so it's just the words, the dyslexia.
Yes.
How did you get through that?
In the beginning, dyslexia is you look at each word as a picture. It's and the problem is if words, there are a lot of words that have the first letter and the last letter is the same, and so you mix those up all the time.
Okay, so you would read them backwards.
Well, no, I don't mean mix them up that way. I mean, like, okay, you take a word that has 5 letters in it, or you take a word that has 4 letters in it, but they both end in the same, you would say the wrong word, and you see the wrong word in there.
Wow.
And so it just doesn't, and you read a book or something, and you don't get everything out of it that you should. But the Army their process was that it was double-spaced, bigger letters, and so I got the right words put together. And so, I did that there. But then, people who are dyslexic, you just can't write essays. You can't write something that's more than, everything you write is just single syllable words because it's the only thing that you're going to use correctly.
Yeah.
My wife and I have both of our kids went to Texas Tech in Lubbock. And so, and our middle daughter, Jana, is dyslexic as well. And so she went to what's called a techniques program there, which is specifically designed for people with dyslexia to teach you to learn. And that's the thing. You have to learn how to use what you can do to accomplish what these other people do without this first step.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
And so we actually, it's not an inexpensive program. And so we decided that there are kids who can't afford it. So we actually did a endowment for kids that are dyslexic to be able to go to this program.
That's great.
But anyway, when they wouldn't, when they weren't going to send me to college, I was uneducatable. I said, "Okay, fuck you. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
I'm out of here." And I got to tell a story. I don't think this is totally. I don't think they're really related, but I still tell it anyway. I was teaching aerial gunnery, and and rockets and stuff to people who were just gotten out of Cobra school, and which that's not something they actually teach you in Cobra school. So we're doing that. And so we were doing low level, high speed, and the range we were doing this was not far out of Indianapolis. There's an Army aerial gunnery range, and I can't even remember exactly where, but not far out of Indianapolis. But the commander of that unit wanted to ride in a Cobra and shoot machine guns. So okay, fine. So I got in the back seat. The instructor normally is in the front seat. I got in the back seat and went out there and let him shoot a minigun and stuff like that. And he said, "Well, how do rockets work?" And I went, "Okay, well, I'll fire one for you." And I fired off a rocket. Well, rarely, they got 4 fins that fold out. They're called a folding fin aerial rocket. They got 4 fins that are chamfered so it'll spin, And so when it came out of the tube, evidently one of the fins broke off. And when it does, the rocket just goes wild like that. It went and hit a tree right in front of us. Okay? I mean, that aircraft was so full of holes. Now, if you'd done that in Vietnam, you just walk off from it and nobody says a word, combat damage, we'll fix it, and stuff like that. Indianapolis, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So it was the next month, I was applying the first working day of every month I applied to get out of the Army.
Wow. And an application period to get out.
An application, but it would be denied. By the end of the month, it would be denied, and I would do it again.
Rinse and repeat.
Okay, yeah. So the first time that I applied after that shot holes in that thing, they let me out.
What a coincidence. This guy's starting to blow up helicopters. We got to get him out of here.
I don't really think it was real, but anyway, I tell the story like that anyway. So I got out and, I had a friend in the Army who, Nick Dreesen, and he had gone to Canada with some girlfriend or something like that and said, "Hey, he'd sent me a letter, said, there's lots of jobs for helicopter pilots up here." So I said, "No shit, here I come." So I went up there and got a job flying as a bush pilot in the Canadian Northwest Territories. And I went in February, and it was like, I don't know.
Damn, cold.
Well, we lived in a trailer, but the trailer looked like a meat locker where you live on the inside. Same kind of door and everything with a big lever and things, no windows, and just walls this thick, because it was in the 60 below range, 60, 70 below range. I'm in Norman Wells in the Canadian Northwest Territory.
You can fly in that?
Yes. But you got to think.
Wow.
You got to think about something. It's only daylight about 45 minutes a day, and so you would keep it in a Quonset hut thing with heaters, and you would roll it down. As soon as the blade cleared that thing, you push the starter button and start it. You don't shut it down. Of course, 45 minutes, and you're talking about the Northwest Territory. There are no ground references. There's no lights anywhere.
Yeah.
It's black.
Yeah.
And so there's no radio aids to navigation or anything like that. So
how did you navigate?
in the daylight, you dead reckon, you had a map sitting on your lap, and you picked real accurate maps. The shape of a lake is correct. Oh. And so when you flew, okay, this lap, okay, I'm slightly left of where I want to be. I need to be a little bit further over from that lake, and that's how you navigate.
Azimuth, flight time, speed, stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually not quite that sophisticated.
Okay.
I mean, you'd literally fly from one lake to the next is what it really amounted to.
Breadcrumbs.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. It's a breadcrumb course. And you'd be taking people out to drilling rigs or bringing them back, or if, they broke a bit or something like that, you'd take that out or whatever. That's what I was doing. And you'd come back in, and slowly in February, slowly as it went on, the days got a little bit longer and longer and longer. But I realized then that I was going to need to do something, but this is not going to work out for me long term. This is really not going to work.
That's hard living.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's really hard living.
60 below. You crashed out there. You're dying.
Well,
nature.
Okay. You carried survival gear. If you went out your door without your survival gear, you were fired.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
You were.
What did your survival gear consist of?
You had parkas that. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to survive more than a couple of days.
Yeah.
But there were thermal blankets, and there was MREs, and the gloves, the stuff, the all of the equipment that you had to take with you, and you're supposed to be wearing the pants already because they supposedly at 60 below, you're down out there and the wind's blowing. You only got seconds to get. I guess that's what they say about like people. Fall overboard in the Arctic oceans or something. Yeah. That you only got seconds before you can no longer function enough to put that stuff on.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was before cell phones or anything like that. So this is radio phone where, you call somebody, you call an operator, and you call somebody, you say, I want this phone number, and you go and you talk to them and you go over, and then they can talk to you. You can't talk over each other at all. So when one person's got that button down, they got. I called my brother who was in Houston. I said, enroll me in the closest university. I'll be there in September. And he lived in Houston, so he went enrolled. He pretended he was me and went enrolled in the University of Houston.
Yeah.
For starting that September. What's interesting is that's how I started there. But then I spent altogether 8 summer seasons doing that to pay my way through school.
Wow.
And it's a rough life. But, it's exciting. Talk about exciting. You fish in lakes and stuff that have never, ever been fished in.
That's cool.
You're on a helicopter with floats, and you can just stop on a lake, and that's what you're going to have for dinner tonight. Because, you're catching northern pike. That's
a great sense of freedom.
It is.
Just go out and I can't imagine a better way to decompress.
I think that you certainly don't have the stresses that you don't have stresses of life that much.
And all of the anti-war culture that a lot of guys came back to and were engulfed in and couldn't get away from. I think that was probably a great decision.
It was, and not only that, it helped because everybody considered U.S. Army trained helicopter pilots were the best in the world. You got that's the best training possible.
Sure.
And I think it still is because, the Israelis, the Germans, the UK, all train here in helicopters. So, but anyway, I did that and went to the University of Houston, made incredible grades. Like on the dean's list. And this is somebody who barely graduated from high school.
What was the switch? Because you still had dyslexia, right?
I still have dyslexia, but I had already learned to learn.
Okay.
Through the Army, I learned how to learn. I learned how to
that you could do it.
I'm not a dumbass, but I learned how to use what I have to make it work. It's different than somebody without dyslexia. There's an extra step to being able to do it. And so I did really well, and I applied to go to dental school and got in without ever graduating from college. And my kids call me a college dropout. And and then went on to orthodontics and did an orthodontic residency in Houston and practiced orthodontics for 38 years here in Austin.
So that's been your day job. is orthodontics, right? But where did the seed get planted for these trips that you do? When did you start doing those?
My wife calls me a thrill-seeking hypochondriac.
Okay.
Okay, because I have always been a risk taker. And, the mountain bike riding, if you don't come home bleeding, you didn't try hard enough.
Right.
And so I've always been interested in adventure. And so one day, a friend of mine gave my phone number to Doug Pitt, who's Brad Pitt's brother.
Okay.
And said, hey, you want to go climb Kilimanjaro with us and ride mountain bikes down? And I went, oh, yeah. And he said, okay. And I said, what do I have to do? And he said, well, this is world water, and we're trying to drill water wells for the Maasai tribe in Tanzania. And so you have to donate the cost of a water well. I said, so how much is this water well?
Yeah.
And, and he told me, and it was not inexpensive. And so I went to Brenda, and she goes, look, you love to do stuff like this. You can afford it. Go try it. So
was that your first big overseas trip? When did you do that?
13.
Wow. How old were you then?
Well, let's see. In 13, I would have been 50. I would have been right at, 50. Yeah, just a little over 51. Yeah.
So were you just being a dentist, being a dad, getting everything done that you needed to get done? Were your kids out of the house at that time?
Yeah. No. Okay. No. Not all of them. One of them was, one of them wasn't. Okay. And, but I mean, okay. So I raced motorcycles for a while in there.
I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I raced what's called legend cars. And a legend car.
What's a legend car?
A legend car is it's a 5/8 scale of the original NASCAR cars, which were the, 38, 39, 40 models, Ford, Chevrolets,
Wow.
Chryslers, Dodges at that time. And they're powered by a 1200cc motorcycle motor, a Yamaha motorcycle motor. And they raced quarter and 3/8 mile oval track, and did that for a number of years. It was a blast.
I bet.
It was a lot of fun.
You got a Corvette recently.
Yes,
right?
I did. Yeah.
I do. I'll have to see a picture of that.
Yeah. So
you like to drive. You like to go fast.
I love to go fast. I mean,
Ricky Bobby it up.
No such thing as going too fast.
Yeah.
I've always said, and I've built a couple of Corvettes, a couple of vintage Corvettes, a 62 and a 63, and I've always said that there's no such thing as too much horsepower. You don't want to use it. Don't push the gas down. Don't push the pedal down.
Yeah.
But having it is not a sin. So,
what was that trip to Tanzania like then?
Oh, geez. I mean, it was really pretty cool because there was a group of us that there was a group of donating people, and then there was there was a couple people that organized it, like Doug Pitt and one other person, were organizing it.
Was Brad Pitt involved in that at all?
Not at all.
Just his brother?
No.
Probably just funded it?
Yeah, we all wanted Jolene to go, but, she didn't make it. So, I'm kidding, but no, he didn't go. And then there was the guide and all of the porters. So it made it really interesting. So climbing Kilimanjaro is really unique. More than a mountain climb, it's a really long hike.
Okay.
You start out at about 2,500 feet elevation above sea level. And the top of Kilimanjaro is 341 feet to be exact.
Wow.
Okay. So you were going up 17,000 feet.
Yeah, that's a trek. Were you carrying the bike?
No, that's what the porters were doing.
Okay.
That's what the porters were doing.
Yeah. That's like a Sherpa then.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
And that's one of my other adventures, going to Nepal and to the Everest Base Camp. God, that's pretty cool. I'll tell you about it in a second. But you know, the idea is that you need it's called climb high, sleep low to get acclimated to that. So you would climb high. You would climb about 500, 600 feet higher than you're going to go back to and spend the night.
Really?
And that's but doing that, if you take the time to do that, all but 2 people out of our group, there were 19 people in our group, all but 2 people actually made it to the summit.
How many days did it take you?
6. You're going through, and it's very interesting because you go through 4 eco zones. When you start out, it's farmland. I mean, there's farmers and stuff growing bananas and all kinds of stuff down at the very bottom where you start out on this trek, and then you go through equatorial Africa. And when I say equatorial Africa, I'm talking about, there's a trail and they kind of keep it not very far out, probably 50 feet out on each side. They don't really keep the jungle real close to it. Because, there's lions, and, you can hear them. And every once in a while see them not that far away, and
they have rifles or any kind of...
They did not.
Just push the porter down and run?
I guess. But, they say that there just really isn't a problem like that. And so they never did, and we never had a problem with it. But you spend a couple of days going through that. And then the next level is high desert, where there's not very many trees and the wind's blowing like crazy and it's fairly warm. But then the next level is actually Arctic. I mean, when you start getting up above about 14,000 feet above sea level, it's freaking cold. I mean, this is just barely south of the equator. So a place where it's warm most of the time.
Yeah.
There's a glacier on top of Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. Okay. Because Everest and all of those others, K5 and all those, they're all connected together in a chain.
Okay.
Okay. And Everest, Kilimanjaro is an extinct volcano. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool trip. And then
so how high when did you start biking? I mean, You're not going to roll over the summit. All right, give me my bike and head straight back down the trail you climbed,
pretty
right?
much.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Not exactly down the hill you climbed, because there were places, okay, from the summit, they didn't carry your bike all the way to the summit. They probably stopped 1,500 vertical feet short of that 19,000 feet, because at that point, you're literally climbing. You don't need ropes in and stuff like that, but you're on your hands and knees climbing for that last 1,500 feet. And so they really didn't. But anything
they didn't want to finish it out.
You couldn't ride a bike down that. But short of that,
show us in your tip.
Exactly. But in short of that, you get back on your bike and you ride down to kind of a base camp. So you go to about 16,000 feet, and that lasts 3,000, 3,500 feet or something, whatever it is. You leave from your camp just about midnight. And the idea is to get to the summit about 8 o'clock. So, it takes about 8 hours to get there.
Wow.
But the big thing is if somebody gets hurt, you got all day long to get them down. That's why they do it that way. Okay. And there's no helicopters or anything in the area. You ought to see their idea of a stretcher is like a car tire in the center on an axle, and it looks like wheelbarrow things on each end.
Yeah.
So there's only one wheel, and that's how that's their idea of a
pretty primitive.
Yeah, pretty primitive.
A wheelbarrow.
Yeah. So anyway, you get back down to that base camp where you spent the night until midnight. Yeah. And then it's a pretty much of a free-for-all for bicycling on the way down, how fast you want to go. And I love going fast. So, but you'd be hauling it down these trails. And you'd see a little ditch coming up and you catch a rock and jump over it. I mean, that's why I've got a rebuilt shoulder. And
Did you wreck on the way down?
oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And there was a doctor with us, so he sutured up my leg. But
Didn't have to use a fish hook that
no,
time?
I didn't have to use a fish hook that time.
That's good.
But I was going along, just really hauling it, and there were little cuts across this man-made kind of a, I don't know, a little plateau, probably 15 feet wide, and there was a little cut in it every so often. But there were rocks, so you could find a rock to jump over, and the little cut wasn't probably a foot, you know.
It's like an irrigation for water to flow. Okay.
So I'm going along, hauling it down, and all of a sudden I see this shadow move down here. So I pulled the brakes and stopped, and I look up, and there's a giraffe eating out of the tree. I mean, there's no fences here. This is not Disneyland.
Yeah.
There's a giraffe eating out of the tree right on top of where I am. I mean, it was freaking cool. I mean, that giraffe his legs were about as far as me to that wall right there. And those are big animals. I mean, they're enormous.
Yeah.
Like feet like that.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, and so it was a lot of fun. I mean, going down. The whole trip was, you know, we had people like Joe Buck was with us, the guy that one of the NFL football announcers.
Oh,
he
wow.
and his daughter were there. Let's see. I was with, you know, and the person who sent it to me was Mark McKinnon. Mark McKinnon had been Bush's media, Bush W, or George W, had been his media advisor while he was president, and McKinnon and I mountain biked together. So
cool.
He was there, and just a number of just really, really cool people who did this. And
it's an awesome trip.
It was a lot of fun. It really was. It was great. You know, it really was. So we spent a couple of weeks there. You know, part of it was seeing and meeting the Maasai tribe and seeing some of the, you know, going to the spots where some of the wells were already drilled.
Yeah, I'd want to see a well for sure. Like, where's my money going to over here? Some guy's got a Mercedes.
I really believe that, because I thought that way at first.
Sure.
Okay. And then I started to understand these people putting this on, these are very wealthy people to start with these are people, you know, that decided that they didn't need to work. They got plenty of money, and they were going to see what they could do about, you know, some of the really poor people in the world and what they would do. I guess what really turned me on is, you know, we're driving to the tribe and there's ruts in the road, and it had rained a little bit. But I mean, in this rut, I mean, I watched this cow pee in this rut, and I watched this kid drink out of it. You know, and so that's when you start really getting it. You know, and it's a strange society because the men sit around and BS and smoke all day, and the women haul water.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they get up, as I understand it, they get up like before dawn to trek where they can get water and get back by the end of the day. And this is a 7-day a week. That's all they do. So
that's a good opportunity to know that you left an impact.
It does. It really is. I really believe the wells got drilled. I mean, I really do. And I think that it was a really good thing to do. Don't get me wrong. I had a great time. You know, I mean, it was incredible seeing what I saw. And I've been back to Africa once since then.
Okay.
You know, I finally. My wife is one of those people who considers camping to be a single vanity in a 5-star hotel.
Yeah.
You know, if it doesn't have 2 sinks where she and I have to brush our teeth in the same sink, she's not going. So anyway, I finally talked her into going back because I found a glamping trip.
Yeah.
And she loved it so much so that she's going back again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Which country did you go to?
We went to Kenya.
Kenya.
Mm-hmm. Kenya is a no hunting country, period.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so the wildlife.
Only photography, right?
Right. And so the wildlife there are, you know, you get right up close and personal with them. And see them, and it's interesting. It was interesting going there because I mean we went out in Nairobi, in a Cessna Caravan, and you just land in a field. I mean, you just land in a spot where there's no trees. You know, there's not a runway.
Yeah,
and it's lots of fun. It was kind of exciting.
That's very cool. Tell me about the next time that you went to Vietnam.
Okay. I had heard about the discovery of a cave um, um, in Vietnam that was supposed to be the largest cave in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's pretty recently discovered,
it was
too.
discovered in 2009.
Right.
It was first discovered in 2009 by a farmer who was looking for a cow that had gotten lost, and it started raining and really hard and everything. And he found this. He just thought he would get it. This is the story I'm told anyway. He started, just decided he found this little hole, under a bunch of rocks, and decided to just crawl in there until the storm was over. And once he got inside, no lights or anything with him, but once he got inside, realized it was a big cave, and he forgot all about it. But he was evidently a number of years later, somebody was talking about it, and they heard about it, and some spelunkers out of the UK wanted to come find it, and they spent, I guess, a couple of years finding it again.
Wow.
It is literally, you're walking along on a stream, and the stream dies into a mountain. And there's a hole in there that you have to take your backpack off and tie it to your belt, because you're going to crawl in there and dragging your backpack. There's not enough room for your backpack to be on your back. That's how small it is.
I'm not going to crawl in there.
It's only about 10 feet.
Really?
It's only about 10 feet.
Okay.
Then it opens into a cavern that literally, in the way they've measured it, could park two 747s side by side.
Wow.
It's truly one of the great wonders of the world. It really.
When did you go?
15. Yeah. I was in the first group of paying people that had been in there.
Oh. So once the scientists and the explorers had kind of established what it was, then they opened it up, you were in the first group to go.
They didn't find it again and really started exploring it until 13.
Okay.
And you can only go a few months a year because it turns into a raging river the rest of the time.
I bet. That sounds like a death trap waiting to happen.
If you get in there if you get in there during the rainy season, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely is, because you can't get out. There's no way out.
Right.
It's 6.5 miles deep, and then the river running in there, the stream, dives underground, and you have to turn around and come 6.5 miles back out.
How did you feel going back to Vietnam?
I tried really hard not to think about it. That this is a cave. This isn't Vietnam. This is a cave.
Right.
Okay. But it didn't. That was how I went thinking, but it didn't work.
No.
I mean, we got there. We drove by, the road, what would have been the rock pile, the road that would have gone over to Quai Son, and and that's Quang Tri province in there. And so, then we get to some other places, just short of that, I fired rockets into those cities.
Yeah.
In an offensive that happened once. So it was real. Yeah, it was real. And I was.
Were you alone?
No, I was with Mark McKinnon and his wife. And Mark has become a really good friend, and he is very, he's attuned to people's thoughts and emotions. And he saw me kind of change, and he said, okay, look, I know this is changing for you. Where do we need to go? What do you need to see? Yeah. And the driver goes, well, but and Mark goes, we're paying for this. If it's a little more, we're going here. So
where did you go?
Quai Son. Drove up there. It's nothing but a hill with a bunch of dirt, and not even the revetments are still there. I always thought those would survive forever, but I think they were probably bulldozed down because, the Marines left it, all the revetments and all that kind of stuff, and the PSP runway in '68, and then we went back in there in '70. The Army went back in there in '70, and a lot of that stuff was still there. It had to be repaired and stuff, but it's all gone now, and that's fine. There's a little village down the hill from it because it's a great, there's a stream in there. So the stream provides the water for the town and stuff like that. So there's a little village down in the bottom of that. So we did that, and then went to a couple other little towns and stuff, and and walked around and spent the night near one of them and things like that I'd been around. So I think with the help of my friends and everything, I'm not sure I wouldn't have just melted down or anything, but I think Mark was really cool in the fact that now what did you do here? I mean, he would guide, ask questions and stuff like that. So it turned out really pretty cool. It really did. I didn't look at it as negative or anything. I tell you what, scared shit out of me. Oh, it was really weird. I went from there to Hanoi. When we left there, made a flight to Hanoi back to Hong Kong, and I walked around the corner in the Hanoi airport. Now you understand this is now 2015. So and they're NVA soldiers in the exact same freaking uniform.
Yeah.
Now that one set me back.
I bet.
I mean, I walked around that corner and saw that uniform and almost turned around and went the other way.
Wow.
I mean, that one set me back a little bit. And then they said, because I was with Still Mark, they said, you want to go see the, prisoner war camp, stuff like that? I said, I really don't. That's just not. I'm going to stay here at the airport. I said, well, can we? I said, yeah, you go do what you want. I'm staying here.
Yeah, you came real close to getting to see one up personal.
I want out of this country. At that time, it was no longer the cave. I was ready to leave.
How was the cave? You said you spent 6 miles. How many days did you spend?
6.5 days. It's 6.5 miles, and you spend 5 days in the cave.
Wow. Is there no natural light? Everything's artificial light. Are you camping in there?
Oh yeah,
bringing it. Is it just that big, that much to explore?
Yes.
What are you doing for 6 days?
Yeah, there is that. I mean, it takes 3 days to get in and 3 days to get out.
Wow.
Now you have no idea what time of day it is. There is no light. The only light is your headlamp.
Weird.
That's it. There are no lights put in there. It's not like the cave out by Georgetown, where you have trails and stuff like that. It's not like that at all. Now I understand now they've made it, it is a tourist location now.
Sure.
And I understand that, that they've made it a little bit better. I mean, you have to rappel from that little thing you crawl in. You're at the top of a sheer wall going down into the cave where you can actually walk. So you have to rappel down that. And then you have to rope climb it back, with the footstep roping.
An ascending device.
Yeah. You have to.
Had you done cave exploration before?
No.
Or rappelling or?
No. That rappelling, yes.
Like, that sounds cool.
Yeah. Now I have rappelled.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did that. No.
What was it about this cave?
It's the biggest cave in the world. And it just, it was there. I mean, it's kind of like, Everest. It's there. I mean, people look at me like, why would you go? It's just a rock. It's Everest, man. It's there. And I want to go see it. And Everest was incredible to see. The cave was phenomenal. You got to understand, it's because everybody says, well, what about snakes and stuff like that? There's no snakes in there. There's no freaking bugs in there. There is no light. There is nothing alive in there because there's no way for it to support itself. Yeah. With no light. I mean, I get how, the theory is at one time a asteroid or something hit Earth and made it all cloudy and dark and everything died. I get it because that's what living in that cave is like. There's nothing in there. There's not a skeleton. There's nothing.
Wow.
In there. I mean, the stalactites and stalagmites are bigger than most buildings.
Holy shit.
I mean, it was incredible to see. I mean, it was truly a phenomenal experience.
Wow. That's a hard thing to envision, that at least on that grand, it's like imagining space.
Yes.
Like how big that
Pretty
is.
much.
Yeah.
Because you're wearing a headlight and it doesn't shine all the way across to the other side. I mean, you're wearing spotlights for headlights and it does not illuminate the far side. That's how far away it is in this cave. And of course there's, they were using water purification equipment, but I got a feeling that the water would have been fine.
Yeah.
But you got to bathe every day, unlike Kilimanjaro, where you go 7 days without a bath.
Oh, yeah. Was it cold in there? Was it hot?
No. No, it's about 72 degrees, 71, 72 degrees.
Wow.
All the time. I mean, you're so far underground that there's no, what's up here, and blowing by has no effect on what's down there. And so it's just really, it was very comfortable being shorts and a T-shirt the whole time. The water, was a little bit on the chilly side, but not much different than a swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great, and again, there were porters carrying food, and you had to have NVA soldiers with you. You had to pay them. That's just a financial thing. They weren't armed or anything, but
Yeah.
they just wanted, they came along and did that, and so and
Just
each
a way to make some money.
yes, and the same thing with the porters carrying stuff. They're only allowed to carry like 30 pounds.
Oh,
Okay, so
that's a convenient
you have a
rule.
whole bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
But it was really, really good. And on that trip, there were they took a total of 10 people. So it was a lot of fun. A total of 10 paying people. Okay, that's not include the support
Right.
folks. Yeah. So it was good.
That's an awesome trip.
Yeah.
What was your next one?
Next one was Everest, in the base camp of Everest, and going to Nepal. Nepal was Kathmandu was very interesting. I mean, it's definitely a backwards country.
Did you feel prepared having done Kilimanjaro? Like you knew what you were getting into, or was this a whole nother animal?
No, I didn't feel like, I was, in pretty good shape and pretty prepared. It was a lot of fun. But I mean, just Nepal itself and Kathmandu and walking around, I mean, I felt, it's amazing because of the poverty and everything there, but I felt very comfortable. I mean, I didn't feel like anybody was going to bother me walking around there. And there were all kinds of stores and stuff you walk in and out of and things. And so it was pretty cool. We went to the burials. We went to how they manage people who die. Okay. And
because they don't all come off the mountain, right? Or do they get everyone down?
Well, this is in the city. This is in the city of Nepal, of Kathmandu, to start with, which was very interesting in the fact that when somebody dies there, they build a wooden pyre and melt the body or burn the bodies to ash and then sweep them off into the river.
Oh, wow. So that's their burial culture is
yes,
almost like a Viking sort
right,
of
exactly
cremation.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And y'all witnessed a funeral?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A number of them.
Really?
Yes.
People just dying every day?
Well, Kathmandu is a city of a couple million people. So, yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay.
But then when you get to, have you ever heard about that airport that's at a real high angle?
I have recently, actually, the highest airport in the world, right?
It's not the highest. That's actually the highest.
I'm thinking of a different one.
Okay, this one is at a real steep angle into a mountain, and if you land short of, you're going uphill. It'll decelerate just by its own weight. You get because it's not long enough to be anything else.
Right.
And then you turn around and go out the other way, and it's a sheer cliff off the end of it, right off the end. So you can accelerate fast enough to be flying, off the end of it.
Or falling.
You fly in there and then hike the rest of the way to the base camp. And so that was very interesting being there. And then, Everest's been around a long time. So the trail that you walk on and the huts along the way that you sleep in and things like that, and people provide your food and things it's a
business.
It is a business.
Did it feel that way?
No. Well, I think the thrill of seeing it, and before that I thought, okay, a mountain's a mountain. So what if it's a little bit taller? But I mean, like you're like this, looking at the top of it. I mean, you're looking straight up to look at it. You're when you're at the base camp, and the base camp, people think that's a little camp. It's a little city of about 1,000 people. And what was interesting is so many different countries' military had encampments there.
Really?
They were doing healthcare work on high altitude conflict.
Wow.
They were doing biopsies, like liver biopsies. I I mean, evidently that tells how your body's doing more than anything else. Do a punch biopsy on a liver, on your liver. But they had, and the thing is that while they had all kinds of barriers, like language barriers and everything, they were all right together and just helping each other out and everything. It was very interesting. These, countries, these armies that are at war at each other someplace else were playing cards together.
Yeah, there's a North Korean camp down there to get liver samples.
And I mean, just like that. I mean, it was really interesting. And then
it's funny without governments how well people can get along.
Politicians.
Yeah.
Politicians. When you don't have a politician around, people can get along.
Yeah, no one there
because
to
there's
tell you
nobody
what
out
to
there
think.
trying to have a bigger one than somebody else.
That's right.
But what you started to mention a little bit earlier is the base camp is right at where the glacier coming down off of the top part of the mountain starts to fall apart. And you have all kinds of, stuff. The things coming out the bottom of the Blake Glacier when I was there were in the early and mid 50s.
What do you mean coming out?
Okay.
Like the ice was melting, and you're
up
like,
on the
oh, there's
top.
Jimmy's bean.
Yes. Up on the top somewhere, somebody dropped a pole or a glove, or they don't really, the skeletons are few and far between, but they're still doing it. I didn't see one come out.
Yeah.
But then, it snows on it.
So the migration of the glacier as it's coming down,
it goes deeper and
breaks
deeper
off
into the glacier. And then right at the end there, the glacier kind of cleaves off because it drops off a little bit there and melts right in there because it's at 18,000 feet. It's cold as hell. Don't get me wrong. And that's what the base camp is. But it's not, you still have the glacier disintegrating, falling apart and melting. So, because there's some days it gets above freezing. And I guess it has to be, even really at that altitude, you have to even be colder than our normal freezing. I don't understand that. But anyway, that's kind of what I was told. So you would see coming out of the bottom of the glacier there, ski poles, what I saw, ski poles, gloves, things like that.
Wow.
Then there was a guy there doing it with, with history. He goes, okay, well, this is equipment out of the, mid to early to mid 50s. And, that people dropped, lost, or whatever.
Sure, it was still good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's probably been down there, 50 years.
There's the yard sale. Anything you guys need. It's a little old, but only used once.
Exactly. Exactly. Only used once.
Yeah.
So.
And so you went to base camp, but you didn't attempt the summit.
I had, base camp takes a little bit of acclimatization. Summit takes about 6 weeks.
Oh, shit.
And I was still working then.
Yeah.
And I couldn't take 6 weeks. But I also promised my kids that I wouldn't try it.
Oh.
They really were, they have not been verbal about anything else, but they were really verbal about this one.
Yeah.
Is about, this isn't fun.
All right,
so,
Dad.
Yeah.
I need you to calm it down.
Right. We need you not to do this. And you have to be planning a couple of years in advance. You probably only need a few months in advance to go to the base camp. You need to be planning a couple of years in advance to go to be, in a group that goes to the summit.
Wow.
Because of the 6 week acclimatization.
That's a long ass time to just stay. Are you just hanging out at base camp for 6 weeks?
You climb.
Training?
Okay. There are a number of other camps on the way up. There's base camp, and then there's base camp is 18,000. Then I think there's one at I know there's one at 25. I think there might even be one in between. And then there's another one, and I don't remember what the altitude is there. And then the summit is 29,000 something. I don't know, almost 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
And no matter what, even if you are breathing oxygen, your body is slowly dying at 25,000 feet and above. Because of the lack of barometric pressure is what I'm told, and just a number of things. How dry it is, you can't drink enough water. So,
wow.
And
don't the Sherpas just kind of prance around like nothing?
Yes, they do.
I saw an interview with some dude that's like been up the mountain 50 times. Summited it. He's a Sherpa.
Yes,
he's very well known over there. That's been up and down and just kind of. I think I saw a picture. I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but it was a guy carrying another guy on his back down the mountain.
And you reached, I hear stories about that.
Yeah.
That
saving people's
somebody's
lives.
trying to make it and a Sherpa will get them down.
Yeah. It's amazing.
See, you've got to get your permit through the Nepalese government to try to go to the summit a couple of years in advance. They only allowed so many people a year ago, and it's backed up.
I've seen it. I saw a movie, and they kind of alluded to too many people being on the mountain, too many people treating it like it's a tourist thing, and like, oh, let's just go. It's clear. Let's do it. And like, no, this is a very serious thing to be trying to do, and getting stranded up there could kill everybody. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, this is one of those places where I think if somebody fails, they leave them. That was my understanding, that otherwise you lose the whole group.
Yeah. Nobody's in good enough shape to bring anyone else back down. Oh, that's wild. Do you think that your family was concerned about you? Was there an unhealthy pursuit of danger or of excitement going on there?
Sure.
Or were you just curious about it and wanted to go?
It was there. And so curious about it and wanting to go, part of it, but part of it is because the adrenaline rush of something that may not work out real well. I do that.
Yeah.
My nickname in mountain bike riding is Crash. Because,
that's not the nickname you want.
Even President Bush calls me that.
Yeah.
Because I still ride on his ranch with him, but I'm willing to try things people aren't.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
There is a little bit of an adrenaline junkie in there. So, I don't know, it's a personality kind of thing.
Yeah, I can relate. Yeah. I understand.
So I don't really know how to explain it. I really don't.
Well, we went to visit you in Colorado. I think you flipped upside down on just about every single one of the zip lines across the canyon that we went to. Yeah. Just find a way to make it more fun.
It is.
Do it upside down.
But we also had a 5-year-old. Yeah. That jumped off a 60-foot cliff too.
Yeah. I think he might have that trait too. Yeah. He's got a dirt bike now. He's a maniac.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah. But, he'll be able to handle things later on in his life too.
Yeah. It's exciting and it's fun. And you're right. You're just hoping that, he doesn't kill himself in the process of all that enjoyment.
I'm sure that my parents aged more rapidly than was necessary.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think my mom, absolutely. When I came back from the Marine Corps, you could tell. You could tell. It's hard on them.
Yeah, I never really thought about that until Brenda, my wife, asked my mother about it. She said, evidently, I wasn't around. And my mother said, there were probably somewhere around 300 sleepless nights out of that 13 months.
Easily. I didn't think about it until I became a father. And then I saw these personality traits that you and I have in my 2-year-old. And I'm imagining, she's like, oh, he's just like you. He's just like you. I have 2 of you in the house now, And I'm thinking, oh, fuck. I hope he's not just like me. Because what I do, it makes me sick in my stomach to imagine him going off at 18 to war.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's the passing of the torch. We do it to our parents, then our kids do it to us.
Exactly.
Jessica's doing it to you now. How do you feel about her being a cop?
I would have liked for her to pick a different way to go, but she's doing a really good job. She's having a hard time now. The officer that was killed had recently the SWAT officer that was killed.
Really?
He was in her class, and he was in the Gold SWAT team when he was killed, and she is the Gold SWAT team's hostage negotiator. So she was there trying to make contact when they decided to go in And so then she, because two people were killed, one person was killed and one was seriously injured, the SWAT team had to have a debriefing. So she sat with the body the whole time the SWAT team was doing debrief. The SWAT team comes along and took over. They separate out, but the body has to be guarded, is the way they put it, the whole time. And so she did that while the actual assault team was being debriefed.
Has she talked to you about that at all?
Not really. I mean, we went to the funeral, which was held at Coda, and there wasn't enough room to do that anywhere else.
Yeah.
And there had to have been a couple thousand officers there.
Wow.
I mean, they came from Florida, Oklahoma, New Mexico. There was a couple. There were a couple of officers from New York, from New York City, who came. It was a well put on funeral. Rightly so. I mean, probably the only really bad part of it was our mayor, Kirk Watson, who was a jerk, and he had to basically beg the wife to be allowed to speak, and he gave a political speech.
Super.
Yeah, which you would expect, I guess, out of a politician. And of the other people that got up and talked, every one of them was closed with an applause. Nobody stood up, said a word. Nobody clapped their hands when Kirk was. It was a political speech. It was embarrassing.
Wow. Well, that's a statement.
You can tell I'm a real fan of Kirk Watson.
Yeah. Is that the Austin
so anyway,
City mayor?
Yeah. So anyway, she's a bar certified lawyer. She could have done anything she wants, but she wants to do good for people. Mm-hmm. She's really into the child care. I mean, the children that are abused or trafficked or whatever, to helping them. So while I don't like the danger she's in, I get what she's doing.
Sure.
So
I understand.
Incredible woman.
I agree. And if you haven't heard that interview, I encourage you to go listen to it.
I did.
Yeah?
I've listened to it right after it became available.
I figured you had.
I did. Every last minute of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As soon as it was available, I did.
Good.
And like I was telling Brianna, I actually have listened to 3 more of your podcasts in the last week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to know what you were getting me into.
Yeah. Well, I know you said she hadn't talked to you about it. I'm sure, losing a teammate's hard for anybody.
It is.
But I think in the interview I had with her, she mentioned a lot of support that they have now within the department. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully they're getting that.
In the department, they are. In APA, was the Austin Police Officers Association.
Yeah.
They provide a lot of support, internally. They really do. Even though she's interim, their chief police right now, Robin Henderson, is an incredible woman. She and I had gotten to meet her years ago, and get to and run into her every now and then. We try to participate in the things that Jessica does. Yeah, and so I'll see her every once in a while. She's phenomenal and a great leader. She just didn't want to be there because nobody wants to be Austin's police chief.
I can understand why.
Me too. I mean, look how many we've run through. They get to retirement age and they just quit. I'm not putting up with the politics of this anymore.
It's like the position to be thrown under the bus.
Yes, it is. And so nobody wants it.
Yeah, hell no. So she's experienced some loss. I'm sure you've maybe given her some advice on that. How did you handle your experience through Vietnam, doing all of that? Because we met this last summer. I know you were pursuing some help with that. What was your journey to there? What brought you to that retreat?
A little bit of background. I have an incredible wife who, is a phenomenal mother and a wonderful wife at the same time. Her father is the same way, just like her. And I wanted to be like them. I thought I was a failure, and I don't know what do you call it when you think that you're a fake on what you're doing?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
You felt imposter syndrome.
I do. Yes. Felt like that because I was not like these people that I really looked up to, and how perfect they were and how good of parents they were, and everything. And so, I've seen therapists along the way to say, I wanted to change. I wanted to be like them.
In what way? What did you feel that you were different?
I mean, Brenda could live 24 hours a day with our grandkids. I can only do a few days at a time, and I need a break.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I cannot. Yeah. I cannot. The screaming. I mean, there's somebody always. There's three of them. There's an almost 9-year-old, and then a pair of 6-year-old twins, and somebody is always in a fight. Yeah. Somebody's crying and everything, and I just can't do it. Yeah. Brenda's dad can do it. I can't. And so I thought, okay, what's wrong with my personality that I can't do this?
Yeah.
And so, and this has gone on for years and years and years. The other thing is that, when you're driving a gunship and you're given a free fire zone, you kill a lot of people. Got no freaking clue how many.
Yeah.
And I have people tell me, well, that was my job. That's what I was supposed to do. That doesn't help any. It didn't matter a bit. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Especially when I started to say 99%, you're 100% sure some of those were women and kids that had they weren't armed. They weren't, they weren't a threat to me or any Americans. Except, what I'm told is that, they provided support. Well, okay. So anyway, I wanted to not worry about that. I wanted to be a real person, not, an imposter. And so I ran into this guy, that's an ex-SEAL, and basically his wife's a dentist, and I had known her for quite a while, and then met him, and he loves flying and stuff. So, and I loved flying still, and so we flew a couple times, and one day I said, "Hey, Brian and I were flying." I said, "Brian, you're smoother. You're more just like flow smoothly." And I used that term. I said, "What'd you do?" And he said, "Well, I went to this this retreat, and." And he said, it really kind of helped me see who I was and everything. And so I asked him about it. And the only thing he would do is say, call Scotty at this number. That's all he told me. So probably took me a month. I saved it. So finally one day I called Scotty. And Scotty was like, I'm just getting finished working out. Go to this website and then call this number. And I went, who am I going to talk to? Just go to the website and talk to this number. Click. That was it.
Pretty blunt, isn't he?
Pretty much. And I know Scotty. Uh-huh. And I got to know Scotty, so I get Scotty. It took me to get Scotty.
Yeah.
Somebody who's gone from 25 years as a SEAL, and as a SEAL warrant officer. So you got leadership responsibilities. Your team dies, and then comes out and tries to help other people. It's pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. Anyway. So through a fairly convoluted process of talking to Shannon and talking to Patrick and having 3 Zoom meetings with Patrick and everything, they finally said, okay, come to our deal. And so I went, and I remember it's where I met you. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I should have said that or not, but whatever. Okay,
it's all right. I think I said it actually.
All right,
yeah,
fine.
That's how we met.
Okay, fine then. Anyway, they were going around the room, and I was going to be close to last, going around the room trying to figure out, say, why are you here? And I really wanted to make it concise. I didn't want to go into it. Sometimes I get a little wordy, but anyway, I mean, why I was there is that I'm a retired orthodontist. I'm at that time, that was not that long ago. 74 years old. Why does this 1 year of my life seem to be the most there, the most important. And I want that not to be important. And I want to be this person. I want to be like my wife and like my father-in-law. Turns out I got way more than that out of it. I'm not a bad person. I got that. Hang on. Yeah. Okay. I got that. Not only am I not a bad person, but I don't need to be somebody different. I'm okay who I am. And God, what a change. I mean, that 2 days altogether, 2 nights, 2 days, parts of 2 other days, and I'm happier now than I've been in 30 years. Now, I'm confident in who I am. I'm no longer trying to be somebody else, because you know what? At my age, I don't know if anybody's age, I can't be somebody else. I can't be different. And so to have what I said a minute ago, I don't even know how many people I killed. I'd have never said that before July the 28th of 2024. I mean, I've been asked, how many people would you kill? Which is a dumb freaking question.
Yeah.
I mean, to ask of a soldier. It's just the one that's been to war. I mean, and a lot of times I'll say, you know what? That's just really not an appropriate question. But every once in a while I go, I don't know.
I had a girlfriend's family member ask me that at a Thanksgiving one time at the table.
Really?
In front of the whole family, yeah. I wanted to leave that. I didn't know what to say. Like, is this some sort of metric that you want to measure my service by? Like, is this the conversation that y'all want to have? Like, he knew I was a sniper. Like,
yeah.
It wasn't
job.
that, right. Like, it wasn't that my job was something else and I just got caught up in a thing. Like, that was my job. And yeah, it blows my mind that people come at servicemen with that question. And yeah, it's an interesting thing to ask someone, particularly in a way, because it feels like a unit of measurement.
It does.
It does. It's like, is this going to adjust your level of respect for my service? Right. Or the work that I did? Like, why is that the numeric that you want? How much trauma have you had, or how much, I don't know, it's a terrible thing, I think, for people to ask someone. But
and I mean, just one of the things you said, I don't. Most of the people who ask me that, they don't even have any clue what trauma is.
Mm-hmm.
No, they don't. You just can't get it unless you've done it. Mm-hmm. And it definitely puts some dents in a couple places. Although I often say, if I'd have changed one, just tiny thing in my life, I may not be sitting here today. One little thing might have kicked me off in a whole different direction. And as it is, I mean, let's face it, I went from being a dumbass, to flying Cobras in Vietnam. I mean, 8 years as a bush pilot, and and going to college, and then practicing 30 some odd years as an orthodontist. I mean, I'm pretty proud of myself now. 6 months ago, I wasn't. And so this is, this is how.
What did you experience during the retreat? I guess what was because it was psilocybin that did that for you. What was that experience like?
Scary as hell. Fuck, man. I mean, because I'm going to be really honest with you. I mean, I've smoked a little pot in my life, but that's it.
It's a little different, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, I was, and I mean, when they set that bowl down with those 2 capsules in it and that tea right beside it, I was looked at that and went. It's kind of like the first time I ever jumped out of an airplane with a parachute. I am going to do this, no matter what common sense tells me. I am going to do this. So I picked it up and did it. Now, what's the experience like? Again, I was afraid during the thing too. It's very interesting. I came out of it. The initial thing was, I mean, there's a lot of other parts of it, but the initial thing when I first woke up was, God, man, I really love my wife more than I thought, And I even said that out loud when I was there. Somebody asked me what, Sienna asked me, and that's what I said. I actually realized I really give a shit about her more than I thought. And, because the whole time of the thing, I'm laying down on that mat where you're laying down, and she's sitting right beside me, and I'm dying during this whole thing. And I'm just really sure I'm dying. And I'm really sorry because she's so much younger than me, that she needs to go out and have fun. And probably so I thought that. And then, okay. I see this picture. This has happened over the next few days, not right afterwards, but over the next few days. I see this vision of there's nothing around me. I'm not on the floor. There's no walls. There's nothing. And it's blue all the way around. And there's this tan wall of cubby holes. And in those cubby holes are the events of my life. And they're all screwed up in the order they're put in there and how they're done, and what they represent. And all of a sudden, all of those events just fall out on the floor and then start realigning themselves. And then I start putting them in the cubby holes. I know this sounds crazy as hell.
Not at all.
But I mean, I'm seeing this.
Yeah.
I'm visualizing. I'm visualizing this. And I walked out of that not wanting to change who I am.
That's awesome.
So, my next door neighbor now is trying to go. Is trying to get in, yeah. And two other people that I've told about it. That are my next door neighbor is a brilliant guy. He's just about to turn 40. He owns a company that he is he doesn't like my term, but he is a professional hacker. He has a company of 110 people around the world that Google is one of his clients. Facebook is one of his clients that try to hack into their computers to show them the weakness of their computers, and that's what he does.
Wow.
Brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant. Got out of college, went to work for the CIA. CIA caught him while he was in college going, okay, you need to come work for us. And so he went CIA first, hacking, then he went to NSA, and then he started his own business doing just that. So anyway, talk about an imposter. He does not believe. He believes he's fooled everybody into thinking that he was good at this.
He's fooled a lot of people then.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
But he's a cool guy. He's really a nice guy, but, he's very depressed. And I started, Zach, what's amazing is we left that program on Sunday about noon. And he lives next door to me. And, he called me Monday morning. He said, hey, you want to go to dinner tonight? I went, yeah, sure. And Brenda was out of town. I mean, I was there at home alone. And he and his daughter and his wife were there. And we had gone to dinner before with, like, Brenda and I, he and his daughter and everything. So I figured that's what he wanted. And so he comes over by himself. And I said, well, is Katie going? Katie and Cameron? He goes, no, just you. And so he goes, we go over there. Now, he has no idea I've been to this. He has no idea of what I thought of myself or anything before that. And he starts talking. He was just talking a little bit. And I thought, God, because I'd ask him all kinds of questions and, about what he does, because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And, he went, well, I'm very successful, but I'm so afraid that tomorrow it's going to be gone. And I said, why? And he started explaining it. And I told him it right there. I said, let me just tell you what I just did this weekend. Literally, it was the next day. Incredible. So he's been in contact with Peter and Shannon, and they're shut down right now. Right. And but hopefully they come back. And so he wants to go.
Yeah, I think I've got a laundry list of people waiting as well. I hope that they're able to get it back up and going. Yeah, I remember it. For some reason, that retreat, I mean, even the first one, it had that sense to it as well that was exactly what I needed at the point that I needed it most. And this summer, the exact same thing happened again. It was exactly where I needed to be and what I needed to experience at this point in my life. And I feel like the psilocybin almost has a wisdom to it in that way of giving you whatever it was that you needed in that moment, if you're open to it. And
I'd do it again. You know, I would. And I mean, Brenda asked me about it, and I said, you know, I would probably do this, you know, once a year. You know, if I started feeling differently, I would do it more frequently, but I'd probably do it once a year, even if I didn't think I needed it, you know, as much, because I think it, you know, I gained so much more from it, and I think that I went in with such reservations that I don't think I could have gotten all out. There's no way I could have gotten everything out of it that I really that was possible, because I had to break down a wall.
for sure.
I had to break down a wall before I got going. So if I'd have started from level ground to start with, I'd have probably been better off.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. My first time I was afraid as well. And so there is an element of skepticism, suspicion, fear going on until that kind of subsides enough to relax into it, or, you know, and then the second time that I went, I was ready. The moment I was almost giddy. Like I know what I'm about to feel, and I know what this is going to physically feel like, and I'm comfortable with it. I'm more interested and curious of the adventure I'm about to go on and what it's going to give me at the end. And I think that that's more likely what you'll experience as you get comfortable in the medicine.
I think so too. So let me ask you a question. Can you, or did you seem to regulate the intensity by using the eye mask?
Yes.
See, I didn't get that until it was all over, because basically the lady sitting beside me said, "You never took that thing off except to go to the bathroom twice." And she said, "So, you know, you were very intense." Because when I first kind of became, I'm going to call it conscious to the world again. I don't really know. I don't really know what else to say. I went to her, I looked at her and goes, "I had a heart attack during this, a little tiny one." And I held my fingers up like this. I had a little tiny heart attack, but I had one. And she goes, "Oh no." And so she screamed for somebody to bring a blood pressure cuff over. And then she and somebody else were trying to put it on. And I go, "Give me that. I can put that on." And I was putting it on. And I don't know if I had told you this before. And Sienna's walking by, and Sienna's a physician. And Sienna goes, "If he can put his own blood pressure cuff on, he's fine."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
No, you can very much regulate it with the eye mask.
See, I didn't do that.
And we generally, it's called, I think, grounding out. And so I had a friend of mine that I served with right next to me that I think it was both of our second time. And I would take it off because I'm also very curious, like, what does the room look like right now? I know what it looks like with the eye mask. How does it look without it? And everything's kind of moving and flowing and almost a little bit alive. And I looked over, and he had this fluorescent blanket on, and that blanket's just kind of moving. It's very cool looking. And he's like twisted up in the blanket and looking a little and like drooling on himself. And I start smiling, and then he opens his eyes. And he looks at me and I look at him, and we both just die laughing and reach out and like fist bump each other and like, "Let's go back in." And like, okay. And we put our mask on, and it's almost like a gate.
Yeah.
You can turn it on and turn it off.
I didn't turn it off. And so it kept getting worse and worse and worse. 'Cause, I mean, I swear I was dying. I mean, I was very certain that I was dying in there. And I was very upset about it, because Brenda was sitting right there, and I was really sorry about, you know, not having been a better husband and everything. That's when I came out and realized I should have been. So anyway, but we've all decided that she agrees I'm not going to get any better. That I have the personality I do, and it's going to be there. So
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting reset that, you know, it's a tool.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a great
and it's
tool
a phenomenal
if used appropriately.
Yeah.
And if you know how to use it, you use it with an intention. Because people do, I guess, party with it. I almost feel like that's not a respectful way to use the medicine. And maybe it's because the context that I've used it in isn't for that. It's been very ceremonial.
Okay. The weekend, the weekend wasn't just the medicine. I mean, you got a couple people in there that have some significant experience in psychology, and you're getting lectures in between. You don't even it wasn't until I left there that I realized that the medicine was only part of this. A lot of it was and Scotty, when he would say, "Okay, everybody, how are you feeling right now?" And things, and each one of those times was meant to do something. So it wasn't just a bullshit conversation. A lot of it was that, and what are you getting, and making you really think about stuff. I'm about as agnostic as they come. I don't believe or disbelieve. And so that is, so Scotty kept saying, spiritually, how are you? And, I guess that you don't have to be, and the more I started thinking about it, it's more that I'm not into organized religion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, but it made me think about that. But the conversations did, not just the medicine. Now, the medicine just opened my mind to just about anything. I mean, almost anything's possible here. Let's go. And then, what's Scotty's wife's name?
Cindy,
right. Then Cindy, on the DMT, the 5-MeO, that I did not do on the second day because I was still scared shitless, and and just worried about that heart attack coming on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, but I went in and did everything except the medication, with Cindy talking and everything. She's really bright. She's a very bright woman. And just listening to her talk and the things she would discuss and stuff. So, and the thoughts of how to look at things. Again, my mind was so open to so much that it was good. Yeah. I mean, it was, but I think recreational use wouldn't have gotten as much out of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that there's more to it than just the medicine.
I agree. The intention, the setting, the set, all of that plays a huge role. Because I've done it in other contexts, and it didn't have the same effect as going to that retreat and having those people there. And I mean, it's also just a group of strangers, but you're all there for the same reason. Yeah. You're all there to try to get some help. Everyone's dealing with their own dramas. Life builds up for everyone. And whether, it was Vietnam in the 70s or some, child abuse that someone endured, that covers the spectrum of life experience.
I think it really.
I think the world would be a better place if everybody did it.
There's a whole lot of us that would be better off. So, it was good. It was really, really good.
That's great. What advice would you give to other servicemen from the past to the present or the future that are feeling those same emotions that you were going through, that transition back, that imposter syndrome, haunted by a year of service despite a life of good deeds?
That's not a simple question. That's not a simple, or at least there's not a simple answer to it. There's not a one-word answer to that. I think the first thing that comes to mind is believe in yourself. I don't think there are very many dumbasses in the world, no matter how much you think you are. You got value. Accept the fact that a combat is going to change you for the rest of your life. And that's one of the things that I wanted to go back to. I don't know what I wanted to go back to, but maybe the person I was before. It's been interesting. I've asked, it's not the one that was going to interrupt the blood supply, but I've asked old girlfriends, that knew me before Vietnam, what do you think? And they go, yeah, you're different. I mean, I was trying to figure out if it was real or me, or something I saw, It's just something I thought, but not in a bad way. Now I've asked one of the same ones, how about now? This is since July the 28th of this year, since the retreat. And, overwhelmingly more like the smooth flowing person I used to be instead of, kind of jerky and different things, different attitudes about different things. And, I used to be real reactionary about things. And just in the last few months, I think, some of that's really gone away. Now, also in the last few months, I've canceled my Facebook account too.
Oh, that helps.
which really makes a difference, because anyway,
it's toxic
it
as
is.
hell.
It is toxic.
God.
I mean, people need to understand that it's a bad thing. And I never was on any of the other. I mean, I never did, Twitter or whatever any of them are. I don't know.
You're not missing anything.
So no, I don't think so either. And so that was one of the things that Cindy talked about. And I thought, okay, that sounds like a great idea.
Yep.
And so,
Scotty's talked about the 90s dump. Get off your phone while you're pooping in the morning. Just do something without your phone in your hands. The 90s dump challenge.
There you go. I mean, it is. So I think that, the biggest thing is you're not a bad person for doing, what you did. I don't care if you killed people. It doesn't really matter. I mean, yeah, is it a good thing? I don't think all those people that died because of me, I don't think they accomplished anything. I mean, I don't think we made any difference at all. I mean, Vietnam is a communist country, and it is. It didn't get any better than it was before, except that now, and I think they would have been the same at this time. They're, part of the country is going more capitalism. They build all kinds of things. I mean, I looked at my razor this morning when I was shaving. I happened to look at it for the first time. It says Vietnam stamped on it. That's where the damn thing was made.
There's no escape.
Seriously? First time I ever noticed that was this morning.
That's funny.
But it's hard. I mean, I tell you, a quickie story. My third daughters got married a year ago this past September. So they've been married, 14 months. And he came to me about 2.5 years ago. He was a Marine. He's a Marine captain. And he came to me about 2.5 years ago and asked about marrying her. And I said, not while you're deployable. I said, I tell you what, why don't y'all live together? My wife about hit the ceiling. But I said, why don't y'all just move in, play whatever you want? But, I mean, that lets you both walk away. I said, as long as you're deployable. I said, even if you deploy and you come back and you still want to get married, fine. I'm a friend support, but I'm not right now. Because I think it changes your personality. If the way it changes afterwards, I think that's great.
Yeah.
But I have an ex-wife, and we were not married during Vietnam or anything, but shortly after, and she's not a bad person. She really isn't. The marriage is, the disillusion of the marriage is no more my fault than hers, and I'll sit right and tell you she had a boyfriend. But okay, I spent 6.5 days a week going to school for 9 months a year, and I was gone into the outback of northern Canada and the Yukon for the other 3 months a year. She didn't see me most of the time.
Yeah.
She was lonesome. That's human nature. So I don't, I really don't fault her for it.
Yeah.
So things change you.
Yeah. I know it's a little bit cliche, at least I feel in saying it. But that closing line on that movie, Saving Private Ryan, when I first saw it as a kid, it hit me. And then having joined and served and had friends lost, and the whole Earn It thing, where they told, it was what Tom Hanks told Matt Damon's character, like, we more or less had this whole mission to save you. Now go do something with your life. I feel that responsibility for, I don't know if it's a good or a bad way to perceive it. But
I think it's an
But I feel
excellent
that
way. I mean, I think it's a really good way to know. And you know, I've never really thought about that until you said it right then. But it's the thing to do. You know,
honor their sacrifice by doing
Right.
something with your life. And I don't know what's good or bad, but I've tried to do things. I've tried to say yes to opportunities and not be stagnant, not feel like if I see them again, if there's a heaven and they're there, I want them to shake my hand and not tell me I wasted what they lost, the opportunity that they never had by, you know, playing video games or sulking and just being consumed by the past. Let it be the past and try to move on. Forgive myself. Forgive everybody else. I was 20 and dumb. So were a lot of the other guys too, right?
I mean, I totally get it. I mean, and this is why I think this is why the military puts the tip of the spear is in your early 20s, late teens and early 20s, because you're very malleable to do whatever they want. You know, no matter.
They'd have a hard time recruiting at 30.
They did. Yeah.
Like, you want me to do what?
I'm telling you what, you seldom in my entire unit flying Cobras, not one commissioned officer.
Really?
All of us were. I shouldn't say that. There was one, but he was the gun team. You know, I mean, we weren't broken up like it, but just call it the gun team commander. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, we had an overall unit commander, but he was a lieutenant. You know, and everybody else was as a warrant officer. And higher ranking officers, they don't fly those things. They don't do that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. So
special breed.
Yeah. You know, I guess, or or just
crazy.
And just you haven't seen enough of the world to understand that there are consequences to this stuff. And so,
thank you for coming in.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it. It's great to see you again. Stay zero.